I'm a little rusty on it.
I'll hum it for you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody out there. How y'all doing today? How's it going? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you might be watching this. My name is Josh, and welcome to my channel. On here, we talk news, politics, and current events. It is currently January 9th, 2023, and off to a quite a year so far, I'd say. We've already had a January 6th esque coup attempt, or at the very least, a little insurrection episode down in Brazil. We'll be talking to somebody about that hopefully later on in the week, just to get kind of a little bit more of an educated view on that. But for today, as kind of the title says, we're gonna have to talk about Andrew Callahan and the recent sexual assault allegations that have come out. After that, let's see, what do we have after that? After that, we're gonna look over some rules changes in the House of Representatives. So some of these, most likely, most of them are going to be due to the holdouts in the Republican Party last week, holding up Kevin McCarthy to becoming Speaker of the House. Then Biden visited the border for the first time in his, I believe, his entire administration, but at the very least in 2 years. So, and over on breaking points with Crystal and Sagar, it seems like they had a little disagreement. So we're gonna check in, kind of see how see where their disagreements are lining up. Then from there, I guess Matt Walsh sent out the raised his hand in some kind of fashion to signal to Andrew Tate fans, to signal to his followers that I'm assuming they've got a safe place in Matt Walsh's community. And then we're just going to go over some, as I kind of said last stream, I want to make this space. I want to dedicate some time each episode to kind of going over and responding to the rights campaign to become kind of the the forefront of the of kind of the men's activism, or I guess one could say in the category of helping out younger guys. I don't really know what to call this community, but at the end of the day, there are people who, you know, for whatever reason, are looking for some kind of guidance. I don't think the left is doing a particularly good job at that. Although I think we have the right answers, I don't think we really make them and target them toward a group of young males who kind of end up following these Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson guys. So we're gonna spend some time, like I said, that's gonna be kind of a. I think I'm thinking, unless there's unless there's like something pressing, I think for a little bit here, I really want to hone in on that as kind of being the outro to the show. So the last thing that we're going to kind of do for most of the shows is kind of try to respond and try to give better answers to that sort of stuff. But that's enough prelude. Let's get right into you never like talking about this stuff. Right into the show. So, absolutely devastated to hear the multiple allegations towards Channel 5's Andrew Callahan of sexual assault. Believe the victims and give them a safe environment to tell their stories. So, like I said at the top of the show, and as the title implies, we're gonna have to talk about some of this. Andrew Callahan, very successful. I don't even think Channel 5's been around all that long. Launched, I'm sure I could actually get you. Let's see, can I find like a Channel 5? Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. When do we start? Doing things media, all gas, no breaks. Da, 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 da. Launching Patreon page. April of wow, created Channel 5. So Channel 5 created in April of 2021. So not even 2 years young yet. Um, Andrew Callahan became quickly a rising voice in terms of kind of on the street, on the ground, man on the street journalist, documentarian. He has a documentary right now on January 6th. He's interviewed Alex Jones. He's very much honed into the populist movement in America. Now, with a populist movement, what you tend to run into is a lot of different flavors of people, but one of the I think dangers of kind of spending a lot of time in in what is kind of colloquially called as like a populist space is this um is a ungrounding of ideology. So populism can kind of mean a lot of things. So Andrew's gotten a little bit of flack. I'm sure you saw him on CNN, and with more mainstream reporters taking issue with, such as like an NPR interviewer, taking issue with kind of how he approached his interviews with figures like Alex Jones and how he went about his documentary making and such. Overall, Channel 5, an interesting channel, something where they're looking at not just political issues, but just really unique and I don't even want to say oddball. That feels like like, but a little bit of the wackier side of the U.S. and of not just politics, but kind of the people in the U.S. Unfortunately, I believe over the weekend, if not this, I think it was over the weekend. I know January 9th. No, this was probably more this morning. Maybe last night, possibly. But either way, over the last couple of days, there has been accusations that have come out about his past possible sexual assaulting, I guess. So the H3H3 subreddit looked like they had a really good kind of summary. So let's just kind of read through that. 4 days ago, TikTok user Cornbread Casserole posted a video TikTok accusing Andrew of sexual coercion / sexual assault in March of 2021. Apparently, she let him sleep over because she got a story from Andrew that he was kicked out of his place. She made it clear that she didn't want anything sexual to happen, but apparently, Andrew would not take no for an answer and repeatedly wore her down until she finally said yes. She also said that she tried to come out before, but Andrew texted her and said it would ruin his life, and she did if she did come out. I think she also mentions at some point he was drunk, but also that he was trying to make her overdrink. In a later TikTok, as her evidence, she has been with Andrew. She posts a pic of the two together, and the post DMs were from probably about 10 people that have other various accusations. A couple days later, another woman, user Moldy Freckle, posted her video on TikTok. Her story was that in around 2018, she had sex with Andrew, but he gave off really bad vibes. When Andrew messaged her again to hang out, she refused, but Andrew said he wanted to apologize, so she accepted a date. On the date, he proceeded to barely apologize and harass her for sex in her car. When she refuses, he then asks for a drive home. She accepts, but once in the car, he sexually harasses her, even putting his hand down her shorts without consent, and refuses to leave when she asks him to. After these two stories, other allegations resurfaced that were never taken seriously or never gained traction from 2021 and 2020. So, let's take a look at the initial video. Luckily, somebody's put it nicely on YouTube. So let's let's walk through a bit of this. Okay. Let me also. I'm gonna shrink myself here for a second. Just to kind of Make sure we're seeing as much of this. Let's do that. Sweet. All right, let's go.
In a million years thought that I would be making this video, and I'm shaking because I've tried a couple different times and haven't been able to get my point across, but I don't like seeing abusers get platforms. And my abuser, Andrew Callahan, also known as All Gas No Breaks, Channel 5, and whatever his new HBO show's called, I forget, has been plastered all over my news feed, and I've tried to come to him person to person and try to get him to take accountability for what he did, but his version of what happened the night that he assaulted me is so skewed. So I will tell you that he did eventually get consent. And that's the main point, is that he eventually got consent because he wore me down. He told me...
All right, so off the bat, let's kind of talk about this. Off the bat, I think the lines of where kind of we draw sexual assault and sexual harassment are complicated. They are complicated. But with that, we need to have an understanding of I think an understanding of what people perceive as the normal way of kind of engaging in sex and with asking for consent, and kind of the what I think is fair to simply label as coerced consent. We kind of understand this from, at least from a leftist perspective. We should be able to understand this in terms of the way our system of capitalism works, in the sense that you are not forced to work, but what you are is forced to work to not starve. So essentially, are you first forced to work for any individual? No, of course not. You have the freedom to work wherever you want and for whoever you want. Unfortunately, what you don't have the freedom to do is choose to not work for somebody, for the most part. So this is the case where if you want to eat, if you want to not die of starvation, not be homeless, not any or not be left in an extremely negative financial and social situation, you must, bare minimum, be creating value in terms of profit for someone else. Bare minimum. Absolutely bare minimum. And it's the same, and we all understand that as being coercion. That's coercive when your society is formatted in a way in which you can't help some of the, there's no amount of wanting to not work for somebody else that will get you food on your table and a roof over your head. There's not a version of that, right? So we understand that kind of coercion. That same kind of coercion is absolutely applicable when we talk about sexual relations. In terms that I think a lot of guys, and I am sure in the very few relationships I've been in, I am sure I have fallen victim to this mindset as well, and it's not good. And it's simply that I think men a lot of times have the expectation, and I think this is through kind of you see a lot of it in media, you see a lot of it in kind of the way we portray relationships. We see a lot of it as men always chasing women, right? And in the sexual context, if you've ever watched TV, I'm sure you're familiar with the scenario of, like, the male character who's really into the female character. And a perfect example of this is Roger. You ever seen Sister Sister? Wonderful show. Roger is a perfect example of this. Somebody who is dogged in their pursuit, somebody whose goal is to wear down the women he's interested in this case being the two main characters, the sisters. But like, we look at that character, and through the show's lens, we're supposed to find camaraderie with the two sisters in terms of Roger being kind of annoying, but also the other aspect of that character is you're supposed to kind of find it, I think, endearing. And while and I think that's it's not just damaging, it's also one of these cases where I think men get it in their heads, and sometimes it's, I don't even know how much of it's societal so much as it's you know, it's if you've ever played video games, if you've ever really done anything, there's always the brute force method. If you've ever played Skyrim, you can pick the lock or you can hit the button and just brute force the lock open. And like, I feel like a lot of guys sometimes don't see that coercive kind of wearing down of somebody's, like, somebody's already given, like, this woman's already given her opinion, she's already said whether she wants to engage in this. But as like a man, in society, you're kind of taught like, oh, you sometimes got to put a little bit of effort, kind of wear down the women, and then and that's not good. We need to, I think, as men, get better at accepting no as an answer, but also I think not getting it, not also like pushing back or rejecting that view, that the idea that women aren't as interested in sex, because that's also a very common societal I think I guess expectation, or like, common sense, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's always the like, women are a little bit more discerning with like sex, even though there's kind of reasons behind that, and part of that is kind of the way men act and the way men approach their sexual relations. This stuff isn't cut and dry, and it's not black and white, but at the end of the day, we understand coercion in a lot of different aspects. This is only just a different form of that, and this is just another, hey, like, whether you think you're being funny, cute, you're not pushing the envelope too much, you shouldn't really be engaging in any of that at all. A really good a something that, like, I think guys need to practice more, and honestly, honest to God, it really, I think, needs to be, being more straightforward with your with your ask for sex, but also, be better about giving, about like not asking in a leading fashion, and not making, and expressing. I think also this goes back to some of the ways where men are socialized, also expressing that, hey, like, it's, maybe it makes you, maybe it hurts your ego, and that's okay to open up and be vulnerable about the way that makes you feel. But you need to open yourself to that kind of vulnerability if you want to be, if you want to express those sorts of things and not be toxic about it. But either way, I know we're gonna handle that in the second half, at the end of the show, this kind of advice stuff. But my point is, coercion. We understand this. It's bad. It kind of seems like that's what's going on here. Not a great look. Not a great look at all. But let's keep hearing her out.
I mean, he needed a place to stay for the night. He had some sort of falling out with one of his crew members or whatever, and I was very clear about the fact that we are not hooking up. He gets
Right
in my
there.
bed and wears me down to the point where I eventually do agree to do things that I wasn't proud of. And I wasn't.
Now, should Andrew, here's like the first thing. you're staying at somebody's house. Do they have a couch? If you're like a guy, like in this scenario, this would be one of those where I'm like, why are you in the same bed, dude? There's probably a couch. Go crash on the couch. This is one of those scenarios where the act of kind of already taking up that space already creates like this expectation and this coercive kind of vibe. I think this is already not great.
Proud of them and thought it was my fault for so long that I continued to be nice to him after the situation. He wouldn't leave my house the next morning.
Leave people's
and then
houses.
as time went on and I processed things, I thought, you know what? Just because eventually I said, okay, whatever, because I was trying to just get the whole night over with so that it could be morning so that he could leave. It doesn't discount the fact that I told him no. I told him no so many times prior to this. I said, I'm tired. I'm not really feeling it. I came up with any excuse that I possibly could to just get him off of me. And he's still...
So I think a knee-jerk reaction, I talk a lot of times, or at the very least, I really try to emphasize being honest and not like, from a man's perspective, being honest and being open and not kind of playing around the edges with what you're kind of feeling and how you're feeling about certain things. I feel like there's always this knee-jerk reaction from guys to be like, okay, wait a minute, I need to be open, but like, why didn't she just say, hey, no, like why is it you're making up excuses? Just be straightforward. And like, I understand that instinct to be like, wait a minute. Your advice, like, you know, my advice to all guys is like, be honest, be open, be vulnerable, be I think I said be honest the first time, but like, be honest and be open about that, right? And my advice to women would be the same, of like, hey, like, you know, in these scenarios where you're uncomfortable, any of these things, I would always make the section of like, be honest, be like, hey, I'm not cool with this. Can you go on the couch, do something, da 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 da, right? So that would be kind of the, I guess, uncontextual advice. But what we need to also remember is, for most guys don't go into women's, like Andrew Callan in this example enters this woman's home, you know, occupies her bedroom with probably absolutely no fear and also no anxiety over the possibility of being assaulted or being put upon in any kind of way. Women do not live in that universe. Women do not live in a space where they are unafraid, where they are not, at the very least, so there is not a social expectation to be ready for assault at almost any moment. How many times you know, how many times do we read stories of, or do you hear stories of women being assaulted sexually or like just physical assault, and when the scenario is described to you, somebody chirps up and says, well, she shouldn't have done, well, that's what happens when you get in guys' cars, that's what happens when this or that. There's always this like, well, the woman should have been smarter and been more conscious of their environment. That in and of itself is already like an unfair justification for women's assault, quite frankly. Like, when it comes down to it, you can use that excuse almost universally to always relieve men who act badly of their actions by explaining it away of like, oh, women should have been ready for this, should have been ready for that. You should have you should have a mace, you should have a taser. Like, we understand that like there's an expectation that women should carry a low level defense weapons, right? Like tasers, like mace, like pepper spray, that sort of stuff. Like we understand that. Me, I wouldn't feel comfortable my girlfriend going on trains or like buses or any of that with at least carrying one object to defend herself. Do you think she worries the same thing about me? Do you think I carry that stuff? I don't carry that stuff. I don't carry pepper spray. I don't carry a taser. I don't carry bear mace. I don't carry any of my firearms. It's not an expectation that men are required to operate within. Not only is it unfair from a like, just from a moral standpoint, it's also like it is one more pressure that women are constantly under. Purely, it's something they must like calculate in the simple act of socially interacting with people. So like when we talk about being open and honest, it does go both ways, but I do think men as a gender broadly need to be better about this and need to be better about creating open spaces so that when stuff like this happens, the man's not going, well, I eventually got consent. And she goes, well, yeah, you eventually got it by constantly bothering me. Like it was the only thing I could give you to get you off of my like person. One. And two, you avoid these sort of situations where guys think that it's just okay to go and share a bed with a woman that they already told you they don't want to, get down with you like that. Go sleep on if you went over to your friend's house, if you're a guy, you go over to your guy's friend's house, you sleeping in the same bed as him under all of these circumstances? No. You're probably crashing on the floor. You're crashing on the couch. You're crashing in a neutral space. And it's because it's at the end of the day because of this weird the social, I don't want to say weird, but the social programming that goes into a lot of these sort of relationships that men and women are supposed to have. And it creates damaging stuff where, I don't know Andrew. I don't know Andrew as a person. I don't know this woman as a person. I'm sure if you asked me before this, I would have been like perfectly fine people. I'm sure both of them are perfectly normal, perfectly well-adjusted people. And for most guys, I think it's, it's like these little things that we're not aware of. And it's hard. But the thing you need to do is be a lot more like ready to accept that criticism. That's, I think, the most disappointing thing about this is looking at these allegations so far. If she got in contact with him and he's doing the it would like ruin my career, you'd really da 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 da, then to me that speaks of somebody who knows that they've done something wrong, who knows that they've created harm, and they want to write some of that off by kind of figuring out a way of like, oh well, if I I'm doing all of this good work, da 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 da, can that outweigh it? And it's not that it can't, but it's all about approaching it. That's probably the disappointing part of this. I think all guys and everybody, I think there's a certain amount of space to be like, did you fuck up? If you can accept that, we can move forward. But if you're going to try to obscure and hide this stuff, it doesn't look great because it speaks to your inability to accept responsibility. So, but okay, we're gonna endeavor to get through this. This is only a 6-minute video. We're only a minute and a half in, but anyway.
Still found a way to coerce me into things that I didn't want to do. And this is really hard for me to say. I never thought it would come forward, but it's even more hard to have to relive the trauma that I endured every single day by seeing this man as a social justice warrior, as someone who cares about human rights, get a platform. You shouldn't be supporting him. And at the end of the day, like,
also, I want to say, I do think so. Andrew's politics are, as far as I can tell, they're a little bit. I'm not comfortable in saying he's really a leftist. I think he's a person who is interested in a lot of the kind of more obscure shades of our political kind of populace, but I'm not 100%. I can't say he's a leftist. But can you be, a socially justice minded person? Can you be somebody who cares for others and perform this kind of negative sexual activity? Absolutely. I do not believe that the kind of, especially the kind of sexual misconduct that is being described in this is inherent to any political ideology. I think where your ideology will kind of will be exposed a little bit, or at the very least will be illuminated for others, will be in how you respond to these sorts of things. There's I think it's important to create space for people to make mistakes and hurt others, and give them a platform to ameliorate as best as they can those mistakes, learn from them as a person, but more importantly, reinforce that learning unto others. Everyone's going to be making mistakes. Everybody. Nobody is perfect. No content creator you watch, no celebrity that you may like, no whatever. Nobody is perfect. And in this, it's all about understanding and creating space for people to get better. Sometimes there are people who want to get better. There are people who grow, people who come out of these experiences and go, and take that responsibility and move forward. I'm hoping that's what we see from Andrew, but I can't be sure. But can you care about these things and in the past have done harm? Absolutely. Humans are complicated. We are not simple creatures, sadly. But it's been known to happen.
I've told close friends of mine, I've tried coming out about this before, and he texted me saying that it basically ruined his life and that his life was over now because of things that I said. And other women have come forward to me, but this is my first time publicly talking about it on a platform like TikTok, because I hope it gets traction. I hope people listen to me. I hope that if something similar has happened to you, that that that's not your fault. It wasn't my fault what happened to me, just because I eventually caved. This is so hard to do.
And she's right in that. There might be people who say, well, you shouldn't have caved. To which the question becomes, how far would this have gotten? You have to think that in that scenario, if you're this woman, you're thinking, how many no's can I give until my answer doesn't matter, until my answer isn't even worth requesting anymore? That's also a big part of that coercion, because ask any woman and they'll tell you they've been themselves, or they know people who have not granted consent, not done it multiple times, and eventually, whether they wanted to or not, it didn't matter. And what we're looking at is a scenario where somebody said, I'd rather give consent for something I'm not particularly in the mood for than be assaulted and be and my consent not mattering whatsoever. This is taking what little control you think you have left and exerting it. And it's unfortunate. It is. This is perfect example of coercion. Perfect example of it. Leaving somebody with no choice but to accept the answer that they don't want to give.
But I eventually, I was really hoping that he would eventually take accountability, but he just texted me this skewed version of what he thought had happened. And in that moment, it wasn't fight or flight, it was freeze. I froze and I couldn't control my body anymore. Not to mention, he got me really drunk that night. He was trying to buy me all kinds of the best kinds of tequila at the dive bar we were at. And a lot of people don't believe me. I've got receipts, I've got photos of us, I've got text messages, but you shouldn't need that. You should believe me, and you should stop supporting Andrew Callahan. Take away his platform. He doesn't deserve it.
All right. So, this is, I think, a little bit more of the interpersonal angle to this, to which, if that's her opinion, that's her opinion. If she doesn't think you should have that platform, she has a right to hold that opinion. Again, these are still just allegations. I don't think he's come out with a statement as of yet, but we'll kind of see how this continues. There's a little bit more. She's got some more context, so let's let the video roll into hopefully that.
In regards to the whole Andrew Callahan situation, this
nice
is the
gamer
last
chair.
time that I'm going to be talking about it. A friend of mine texted and asked if I was okay because she saw my post on Reddit. That wasn't me that posted on Reddit. I'm getting a lot of hate. You guys seem to need receipts. Someone speaking up about their story isn't enough, so I'm gonna share with you some, I guess.
Also, I want to say, I don't think asking for receipts is, I know a lot of people, so there's obviously peoples of Andrew, people of Channel 5, people who are fans of Channel 5, who I'm sure are kind of making a meme out of the receipt talk. And you always kind of see this with this sort of stuff, is there's always people who disingenuously are going to ask for hard evidence, or will kind of set the bar of what is acceptable evidence rather high. I do think there is, especially when you're I don't want to say that, there's the whole believe all women, and that is true. You should be, and how we exercise that, I think, is important. And the thing that I think everyone needs to be doing is allowing these women the space to get out their story and to speak freely on their experiences. A lot of times, I think people will, like I said, meme about oh, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Well, look, this is, not everyone's always going to have, not everyone has, a webcam on their computer that films their room. Not everyone has these sorts of things. So we have to kind of take it with a certain amount of understanding that, that I think concern over, especially when you see kind of multiple accounts of this, that should kind of raise a red flag for you. A little bit of okay, one person coming out, it's not great. If the creator doesn't address that, that's a bit sussy, to say the least. If they do, then you hear out both sides, and at the end of the day, it's up to kind of the audience to make that decision of how much they believe either side. That's kind of, without having any kind of legal apparatus to figure this stuff out, that's about as best as we can get. But this woman and the other women that she's going to mention, who as far as I know in this video don't get doxxed, as far as they go, it's, at the end of the day, it's evidence that we need to hear, and it's context that we need to hear to kind of understand the initial story. So always keep that in mind. Be open to more evidence. It's not wrong to ask for more evidence. It's always about being careful and not to frame evidence as some kind of I guess a smoking gun, I suppose. Not all evidence is created equal. but all evidence has some value to it.
It's like evidence that I was with him that night. I didn't have a camera set up in my bedroom, so I don't know what to tell you. You're just gonna have to take my word for it, and if you don't, that's okay. This is the last time I'm ever gonna talk about this. And I've made my TikTok private, so if anyone wants to share what I'm saying with the people on Reddit, feel free to do that, but I can't mentally handle this anymore. This was Andrew and I agreeing to hang out when...
Yeah, I'm in St. Pete. Who I should kick it with me? Home. I'm solo, just walking around. Yes, I just walked out. Walked in the door. What part of St. Pete are you at? Up north. Text me.
And he was in St. Pete. This was us the night at the bar. We went into the bathroom to take a photo because this bar, the bathroom has its own Instagram page, and it's just something
not abnormal at all.
Bar.
It's a whole thing.
Like I said many times before, I trusted him. You know, and people are blaming me for trusting him, and I did. You know, and it is what it is. This is a comment.
Andrew sexually assaulted me as well. I had previously been involved with him, but only when I was extremely drunk. I confronted him about it, and he invited me to dinner to apologize. Then he assaulted me in my car. I had to physically kick him out. Thank you for sharing. Fuck him. Jesus Christ. I literally finally came out about this yesterday only on my Instagram because I cannot fucking stand this dude popping up on my TV as a social justice warrior. I've also heard many similar stories from others. Yikes. Jesus Christ. Extremely drunk, confronted him about inviting to dinner to apologize. Yeah, I think we saw this in like the H3 post where I guess he faked kind of engaging in an apology and instead performed another assault on somebody. That's Jesus Christ.
From someone who I've been speaking with about what happened to her. This is a message.
Yes, of course, I know it sounds cheesy to say you're very brave for even reaching out to people because that's really hard to do. I can ask some people I know if they're willing to talk. Also, my friend is mutual friends with his camera guys, and I basically heard he was sleeping with girls who looked very young and lived with their parents, so 99% underage, while on tour. Yikes. Okay.
Message I got about a year ago from someone who said that he has been known to associate with underage girls. This is the story from the same person of her experience.
Pretty much all of them have ever had uncomfortable situations with him, been assaulted, or know someone who has. The situation that I was in was at a party probably 3 years ago, and I thought he was cool at first, and we had a pretty good convo, and then we basically went into a room, kind of isolated from everyone, and he was really pressuring me to go to his house, and I said no multiple times. He kept pushing and pushing. As you know, he's a very tall guy, and I'm only 5'4", and I was pretty drunk, obviously, because party, duh. And I feel like he was blocking the doorway, so we were in there for a while, and luckily my friend came to check on me. Yeah, so, okay. So, I mean, this whole, like, I talked earlier about kind of the, like I mentioned earlier, the kind of, I guess, physical and what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of social awareness that women have to operate in social spaces. This is another one. When we talk about, like, no guy is concerned when women are a certain height or if they're taller than them, right? That's not, like, I'm 5'5", right? I'm not, like, concerned about, like, women who are taller than me in any kind, in any kind of physically threatening way, right? Like, that's not something I'm ever worried about, and that's not something I don't think most males are worried about at all. So, like, these are the sorts of, like, scenarios where, even if Andrew is being is trying to be fun but still be pushy, he's still taking advantage of these social situations, these social these social pressures to, at the end of the day, get the thing he wants, which is sex at the end of the day. We've heard, I'm sure you've heard stories of women who are who have friends who will text them on dates to kind of bail them out or not bail them out. It's kind of stuff like this where when dealing with, and part of this also comes from a socially reinforced idea that men are more violent. I don't think that inherently, but I do think society pushes men, and through the through what is perceived of the masculine ideal, pushes men to be more violent. I do think that. I do think the social programming does that. I don't think that that's how men are inherently.
You can pause to read any of this stuff. This is about how he was canceled on his French Quarter confession show when he went to Loyola because of the same sorts of allegations. Loyola because of was canceled.
There we go. Of course, I'm also still trying to gather more details, but I was a few years ahead of him at Loyola in New Orleans, and I've heard he got canceled pretty bad, but it was kept on the down low. But that's why he was replaced on his show French Quarter Confessions, and he doesn't speak much about that and New Orleans anymore. We're trying to get more info to further support. Also, Tim Heidecker viewed my story, your TikTok reposted, so we know he is aware. He is one of my favorites, so I am hoping he pays attention and takes action. We got you. I know how hard it is to come forward, especially when your abuser holds a position of power. You're so
on his
so brave.
French
and you did the big
Quarter
thing.
confession show when he went to Loyola because of the same sorts of allegations. You can pause to read that. Just another story. He's got a list.
God damn it! Didn't even explain that one.
List. Another story.
Hey, I just want to let you know I went to school with Andrew. He pulled the same shit with me and a friend of mine. He frequently Airbnb listed his place and did the I need somewhere to stay tactic, which feels very intentional. He also used to try and tell people he was on a male birth control injection. That just sounds painful. I'm very sorry this happened to you. Did gross it feels. People praise his politics. Okay. Someone told me that he told them he has a list of women that he gets to give him head without reciprocating. Like, truly disgusting. Also, maybe too much information or uncomfortable, but he thinks the clitoris is inside of the vagina. It's actually embarrassing for him that he's this gross. We shouldn't feel bad because he sucks. Lol.
He's got a list of
fellas. Come on now. Get it together. Get it together, boys. So I don't know if this dude. So they mentioned New Orleans. Is he? Let's run with an assumption that he went to school and grew up in the South. This is what happens when you don't have proper sex ed. This is what happens. You end up not knowing where these certain body parts are.
Women who he gets to give him head. Another instance.
I'm so sorry you messaged him and he didn't do anything. That's incredibly disappointing. Yeah. We're listening to you in New Orleans and in Austin. My friend lived with him for a while and apparently sexually assaulted their other roommate, who has been terrified to come forward. You're helping a lot of people sharing this, and I'm sorry some people are so thick in the head that they don't have compassion and can't even educate themselves on consent. People really out here pretending to care about women until their favorite public figure violates a woman, then it becomes inconvenient for them. Yeah, that is a that is a thing that happens. When it comes to, again, I think if there's ever anything to say to anybody, in terms of, public figures, we live in a very socially I guess capitalized world, you could say, right now. And understand that the people you're watching, the people that you might be engaging with their content in, um, again, are going to probably disappoint you. And be ready to hold them accountable, and also be ready to, I think, I don't want to say don't ever be shocked by people, because I don't like the idea of being so cynical, but be more discerning, I think, with some of the people you watch online, including me, which all two of you, but including myself. Like, you know, people make mistakes. People are, when they get up on these platforms, they, at the end of the day, are, you know, putting on a certain affect to their personality. For me, I'm rather antisocial in real life, and I'm much more reserved in real life. But I come on here, and I'm a lot more loose. I'm a lot more loud. I'm a lot more engaged. I'm not as much in the real world. In the real world, I'm definitely a bit more reserved. But like, it's the, just kind of be wary of people. It's,
of sexual assault. And I'm keeping these people private, and they've all consented to me sharing their stories. And I'm doing so because I've already put my face out there. I'm already getting all the hate.
Which is the hardest part. Somebody has to be the person to kind of throw to raise their flag, to allow others the space to also raise their flags with their experiences. This is really disappointing. So far, like as of now, these are still just allegations, but like, with the quantity, and kind of the very similar pattern, it's not great.
It
not
is what it is
great
at this
all.
point. There's another story.
I just wanted to say, in response to your most recent post, I've heard through the grapevine of Andrew begging girls for sex till they said yes, and I have a mutual who went on a date with him. He used the same excuse, fall out with the crew, and needed a place to stay. She said no, you have money, pay for a hotel, and then he got pissed as fuck. Okay.
More people saying that they've heard about this before. Another story.
Andrew, wait, did I look away for literally 2 seconds? Jesus Christ, we're okay. Went to a neighboring high school as him at the same time he was in high school. What the fuck? Not the first time hearing about something like this. Receipts. Okay, this person. This is what I mean. Calm the fuck down. This sort of defense of people of receipts, chill out, all right? Let people give their thing. Stop being so damn eager to defend somebody who, quite frankly, can defend themselves. Andrew Callahan does not need a stanky bean over here with probably less than 100 followers to defend them. He'll be fine. He can address this himself. I don't have any, never claimed to. I'm just inclined to believe her because I've heard people say some sketchy things about him over the years. Of course, consent is not consent, it's consult. Yep.
Another story.
Andrew Callahan and I are the same age, and he went to a high school in Seattle near mine at the same time as me. Oh, okay, maybe he went to, I don't know where he went to school, but my point about the South still stands. So I know a lot of the same people as him. He also frequented local kickbacks and spotties, basically parties with jungle juice in a park, fun, and was doing some rapping stuff back then, so a lot of people knew of him. It's pretty, is Andrew Callahan a rapper? Okay. It's pretty common knowledge in Seattle social circles that he's committed sexual assaults. Yikes. He don't know his victims personally, but have friends who do. To my knowledge, alcohol and coercion have been a pattern. He's known locally to a lot of people as a predator. Also, you have my consent to share this. Yeah, and so we're kind of seeing the coercion be pretty much a recurring theme here. That seems to kind of be the overall pattern.
My my inbox is flooded with people saying that they are proud of me for speaking up because they're too scared to, so I'm sharing their stories for them. This is absolutely taking a huge toll on my mental health. I can see that a lot of you don't want to believe women when they come forward about things, and I've just got to say that says a lot about your personality and who you are. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and if you think I'm making it up, that's on you.
All right. Well, that was, yeah. To kind of, that was in the media were like, believe all women. The Democrats and media were like, believe all women not too long ago. Yeah, because you should. You should. I think there's a certain amount of belief and credence you should give to women when they're telling these stories. I don't think it's a, like, this isn't a case of like, do I think everybody who comes out is like truthful. We saw from a lot of this video that there's a lot of from a friend to me, I heard all this stuff. And from that, it's, at the end of the day, it's context. I think believe all women is kind of a bad term to use for what we actually want, which is give women space to voice their experiences and not to undermine them in a way that is as hasty as you would kind of believe them. I'm not gonna say thin line, but there's a balancing act with any of these allegations. So far, like I said, Andrew, let's see, let me do a Google search. I don't think he's said anything. Let's find out. Doesn't look like. So he has not come out with a statement yet. I will be interested to see what he says and how much of this he refutes. But based on so far what we've heard from this woman and the people who have gotten into contact with her and the information she's disseminating, this doesn't look good for Andrew here. This looks like a pretty trackable pattern, it seems. We'll kind of see as more details come out. We're still in the first stages of this, but like anything, you want to get as much information up front and then filter through that. So we'll kind of check in with this as it goes. I'm sure we'll hear more about this over the week, but yeah, not good at all. No bueno, no fun, not a good time. But then James Bynes accused Tara Reid. They said they were a liar with bad intent. Oh yeah, the Tara Reid, the Tara Reid stuff was I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I agree. Like, I don't think that the people who completely ignored that story weren't hypocrites, because I definitely think they were. There was certainly an element of I think like inconvenience with the Tara Reid stuff. I definitely think there was like that. It'd be like really inconvenient, and like we'd like to handle it, but like, we're gonna be more discerning. And like with these sexual assault cases, and with these allegations, you always are playing a game of how much you let the allegations and you let the evidence that's been forwarded, how discerning you are to that. If somebody comes out with like a story and they have, I think in Tara Reid's, the specific example you're mentioning, I believe she had like a friend that like came out and corroborated that they had that conversation right afterwards. You're gonna have people who will then go, oh well, but that's not really, you don't have like a picture or video or something. And like it's always this like, how discerning you are, mixed with, if you're a media company, how much information you're really interested in, in kind of letting slip out, basically, in that, if it's kind of on the edges, do you let it run or do you not let it run? And it's kind of reveals your, quite frankly, your bias when it's, we'll let it run even though there's less information for a certain person, but we won't let it run when there's an equal, maybe lesser, maybe a little bit more evidence for somebody that we have a bias positively for. Another good case is like Bernie with, Warren coming out and talking about Bernie saying that she couldn't win the presidency, and how mainstream media ran with that, even though there wasn't really more evidence other than Warren said that they had this conversation. But they were willing to run as far as they could with that, and that revealed a lot of their bias. I'd like to think I'm not, like, at least in this case, I'm not incredibly biased one way or another. I just think this looks bad so far. We're gonna need more information, but for now, not great. But either way, yeah, it's always disappointing whenever you see this sort of stuff. Mainly just because, like I said, there's a certain amount of, sorry, I'm like fixing something right now. Give me like 2 seconds, guys. Something's not, there we go. There's a certain amount of, I think, just scrutiny. People aren't happy about, performing for certain people. But either way, let's move on. Actually, let me. All right. So, I should probably do the thing, because they tell you. If you're enjoying any of what you're watching so far, I do encourage you to hit that follow button, and head over to the YouTube channel to check out some of the clips that I've made from other shows, and maybe give that a subscribe if you can afford it, if that's something that you can do. It really helps out the channel. It helps me kind of continue to do this, and also increase the amount of time that I can dedicate to this. I do have a normal, like, full-time job. This is kind of the side thing. More time doing this means less time doing that, means more time me being here and less time being there, which is kind of the goal of all of this. So yeah, appreciate any kind of support, and let's just get into the next topic, shall we? There we go. So, I don't know if you heard, but we have a new Speaker of the House. After 15 votes, the Republican Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, has been elected into the Speaker of the House position. This took a lot of political wrangling and political, what's the word? Horse trading, but McCarthy was able to pull it through. So, but with that horse trading comes quite a few concessions that he needed to make. So let's take a look at some of these concessions, because these will be important kind of going forward in the next legislative year. All right. The House Rules Plan that amounted to Speaker Kevin McCarthy's first legislative victory on Monday night brings much bigger consequences than 55 pages suggest. It will shape the chamber's operations and what bills can win approval over the next 2 years. Adoption of the rules package is a routine step in setting up any new Congress, but what is traditionally seen as a housekeeping issue will effectively determine how Republicans can govern the chamber. That's why the rules measure was the centerpiece. Excuse me. Centerpiece. Let's see. Centerpiece of high stakes negotiations between McCarthy and the crop of rebellious conservatives who kept him from the gavel for much of last week. Talks that started just after the House was called for Republicans in November 2022. Even before they started hashing out handshake deals as McCarthy scrambled for votes to become Speaker. Conservatives had already raked up victories in the rules package. They had pushed for and won provisions that require bills be focused on a single subject, part of an effort to rein in sprawling, take it or leave it legislative behemoths that both parties' leaders have muscled through in the past. Their victories only grew as McCarthy pushed toward his 15th ballot speakership victory. However, conservatives successfully pushed to allow a single member to propose what's known as a motion to vacate the chair, a vote that would effectively topple a sitting speaker. And they secured the ability to seat 3 of their own on the House Rules Committee, which would give McCarthy's right flank de facto veto power over any bill that comes to the floor. So let's talk about this really quickly. So the motion to vacate the chair is rather spiteful, and also is a good tool to, in their mind, in the way that they've framed it so far, it's been, oh, we will be using this for what's the word? We'll be using this for accountability. Really, what this is going to end up being is essentially a check, or a just kind of a spiteful move against the speaker when he doesn't do the things that the House Freedom Caucus wants, specifically the holdouts in the House Freedom Caucus. So that's going to definitely be used. They wanted to have, so that's always been a rule, but the threshold has always been rather high, meaning you would have to garner a lot of support before, you would even be able to introduce the motion. But now, with the threshold being lowered to 1, essentially anybody can challenge McCarthy's position, which leaves him wide open for constant attack. He's pretty much going to be a Democrat in terms of, how much fire he can now take from his own party. Along with, let's see, what is it? Along with the veto power for the bills, this is something that I think is useful from a legislative standpoint, but is also going to hamper the Republicans' ability to pass any legislation out of the House, even though they know that it's not going to pass the Senate. So, with the makeup of the Senate and the House right now, there's no chance of almost anything getting passed. We're now looking at 2 years of essentially no real legislation that isn't must pass getting through both chambers. But what you're going to end up seeing now is, now that the Freedom Caucus members have a few more seats they now have a few more seats in the rules. I think it's the Rules Committee, right? Yeah, the Rules Committee. They're now going to be able to exercise and shape the bills that even get passed in the House a lot more now. So overall, I mean, again, substantively, these aren't going to mean too much. The motion to vacate will be kind of a palace intrigue thing. But the other, the Rules Committee seats are going to be, are conceivably helpful if they plan on passing anything. Conservatives are also claiming victory on enshrining a rule first put in place by the Democrats, requiring bills to be released at least 72 hours before a floor vote. But the package approved Monday night includes no new language to enforce that mandate. At the heart of the rules push by rank-and-file conservatives, including many in the Freedom Caucus, is the desire to shape a more inclusive legislative process that concentrates less power with leadership. This is good. To that end, they have secured promises from the leaders that aren't formally written down in the rules, such as allowing more amendments to be considered on the floor and more widely distributing committee positions. No matter the size of their victories on their side of the Capitol, though, House conservatives are soon to meet up with a harsh reality. Most legislation that passes their chambers is expected to be dead on arrival in the Democratic-controlled Senate. Yes. So luckily the stakes are very low for any of this stuff. Like there's not a danger of them not being able to pass certain legislation. Here's a look at the most consequential elements of the rules. Pay-go versus cut-go. Republicans have killed Democrats' pay-as-you-go rule, often shorthanded as pay-go. It had required legislation that would add to the deficit to be offset with tax increases or spending cuts. This was from a kind of progressive perspective. This was kind of trash. Pay-go was a way to hamstring certain progressive legislation by requiring that there be cuts to public programs. So you're thinking, the big ones being like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, along with the kind of I don't want to say poison pill, but like what will always hold them back is tax increases, where Democrats don't want to be framed as increasing taxes, meaning their party and their leadership specifically will essentially deny any ability to pass progressive legislation because there usually would need to be some tax increases. The GOP has replaced pay-go with what it's calling cut-go. You guys are so fucking creative, which requires mandatory spending increases to be offset only with equal or greater decreases in mandatory spending. No new taxes allowed. The GOP last put this into place in the 112th Congress. Cut go, obviously no new taxes, which means corporations, which means large businesses do not have to worry for the entire time that the Republican Party is in power in one of these chambers. At the very least, while they're in power in the House, they now don't have to worry about the taxes being raised, because they've now locked down the ability to do any kind of tax reform, any whatsoever. And who does that help? They're not going to lower taxes, right? Like, they're not going to lower taxes at all. So, and if they're not going to increase them on corporations, on big businesses, on wealthy individuals, we still get stuck with kind of a shitty tax system that doesn't go after the rich and that disproportionately goes after poor people. Meanwhile, rich people are, system hasn't changed for them. Things have stayed relatively the same. So that's great. Lovely. That doesn't mean that a deficit increasing tax cuts are off the table. The cut-go rule only requires offsets if bills would increase mandatory spending within a 5-year or 10-year budget window. For example, Republicans could pass extensions of the 2017 tax cuts, some of which have set to expire in 2025, while others already have. The first bill Republicans are bringing to the floor, once the rules package is adopted, would increase the deficit by more than $114 billion over a decade, according to a nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office analysis released Monday. The measure from Adrian Smith, Republican from Nebraska, would roll back about $80 billion in IRS funding and increase revenues by nearly $186 billion. Lovely. So notice, roll back 80 billion for IRS, which means less people going after and investigating tax fraud. And now, we just won't spend it on that. So that's great. What is this? Funding and decrease revenues by nearly 186 billion, meaning it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us $186 billion, probably in seizure of taxes. So lovely, great. Party of the people. Supermajority on taxes. House Republicans historically slim majority will in its rules. House Republicans' historically slim majority will in its rules package constrain itself severely on tax rate increases, requiring a 3/5 supermajority vote to pass any. In practice, however, that's more of a statement of ideology than a policy-making gesture. Unlike in the Senate, where 60 votes are needed to steer most bills past a filibuster, in the House, Republicans In the House, Republicans will have nearly total control over what legislation and amendments are considered on the floor. And of course, they aren't interested in moving proposals that to increase tax rates. Goodbye. What is this? The Gerhardt? Gerhardt? I think that's what it is, right? Gerhardt? Gerhardt. I think that's Gerhardt. Gerhardt rule. The package purges the Democrats' so-hard Gerhardt rule, which had allowed the House to automatically send a measure extending the debt limit to the Senate when it adopts a budget resolution. That maneuver has been used to let the House avoid a direct vote on lifting the debt ceiling. Okay, makes sense. There is a broad agreement that the U.S. defaulting on its debt would trigger unprecedented fiscal calamity, but the return of this rule could bring back the debt ceiling brinksmanship that took hold on the Hill in 2011 when the U.S. credit rating was downgraded for the first time. Congress is expected to have to act on the debt ceiling sometime by spring. So lovely. Okay. So yeah, essentially this basically just makes it so we're gonna have to fight about the debt ceiling, which is gonna be fun. Hello, Holman rule. Republicans have revived the Holman rule, originated in the 19th century, because of course they don't have rules for in the 21st one. That allows Congress to amend spending bills with the intent of salary reduction or employee termination or cutting a specific program. Let's see. It's bills with the intent of salary to amend spending bills. Okay. In recent years, the rule was used to reduce the salary of the administrator of the Western Area Power Administration to $1 to eliminate 89 positions at the Congressional Budget Office's Budget Analysis Division. Both proposals failed to become law. But Democrats are raising the alarm about the Holman restoration nonetheless. Representative Jerry Connolly from Virginia warned last week that Republicans could use it to dismantle the federal workforce and carry out political vendettas at the expense of career civil servants. Let's see. Originated in the 19th century that allows Congress to amend spending bills with the intent of salary. Okay. So essentially this would unlock the ability for them to target spending bills in a way that either decreases salaries or would eliminate roles. This is basically a way to gut bureaucracy essentially. But do it now again. Do it from not from like a performance basis, because it's not like these people are doing their job badly. This would be on the simple basis of Republicans just disagree with, tax investigators. So we'll reduce your salary to $1, and people will obviously quit, and then or they'll just terminate whole entire areas. So that's lovely. Committee oversight to make good on their pledges of more federal government accountability. Republicans are requiring every committee to submit a plan for authorization and oversight to the Oversight and House Administration committees by March 1st. They also want a full accounting of any unauthorized federal programs and agencies that received funding in the last fiscal year. The rules package further requires committees to weigh whether any programs should be moved from mandatory funding to discretionary funding, which would force that spending out of an automatic process every year and into one controlled by lawmakers. The House Appropriations, Ethics, and Rules Committees are exempt from that mandate. Okay, well, that's certainly good. So, in terms of the kind of way that the House is going to function, it seems like we're looking at one where, as far as I can tell, it seems like we're going to be looking at a House that's going to, as the Republicans, kind of exercise their power, it seems like they're going to be focusing really heavily on, why did I change that back? I'm stupid. What was I going to say? It seems like they're going to be focusing very heavily on, how do I put this? On kind of tweaking these little kind of edge cases to a degree, or maybe not edge cases isn't quite the word I'm looking for, but point notwithstanding, what it seems like they're going to be interested in doing is moving to kind of attack these political institutions in a way that's definitely going to help their fundraising. You know, are they going to be passing legislation? Probably not. But what they're going to have the ability to do is to fundraise and is to um, kind of posture and like make all these little changes and like kind of tweak all these things that their audience is going to really appreciate and really see as progress and kind of perceive as, you know, them going after failed institutions or like costly institutions that aren't doing enough. You know, you talk to kind of any of these uh what's the word I'm looking for, these you know, you talk to Republican voters and they want to see a reduction in bureaucracy. They want to see kind of the government run in a more fluid and more specifically cheaper fashion. If there's something that Republican voters, I think, uh, at least from my experience in talking to them, tend to be focused on in a way that I don't think they've thought 100% about, but I think it's like it's something that they can definitely feel is the wasteful nature of how their money is spent. So like, you know, when they think about their tax dollars being spent by the government, you know, in their mind, they're thinking like, yeah, it's getting wasted. The country's not getting better. Things are getting actively worse. The schools aren't improving. My kids are having a harder time getting into college, and then even when they're out of college, it's the economy. Christ above, I'm yawning so much. The economy is such that, you know, they can't find good enough jobs to move out, or they're constantly struggling. So Republicans definitely, again, they recognize kind of, I think, the government not functioning the way it necessarily should be. But unfortunately, what I think's also kind of happening is a misunderstanding of how their tax dollars are being used and how their tax dollars are being implemented, I suppose one could say, and kind of a misunderstanding of like, you know, how do you create a system where your tax dollars are being used properly. And it seems like the House Republican strategy is going to be, you know, kind of observing, or not observing, but like trying to draw out that response of the, you know, the response of dissatisfaction with where your tax dollars are going, to chip away at institutions that do a lot of good in American societies, especially when we're talking about kind of what's, you know, kind of positive institutions. You know, there was like a, you know, there was, I recently visited my family on my dad's side, and one of my family members made like a comment about something about the IRS or something about you know, regulatory institutions, and I think I mentioned like the CFPB or the SEC or one of those regulatory bodies, and she offhandedly mentions, you know, oh, those are just nonsense alphabet people. Those are just bureaucratic busybodies who don't actually do anything. And it's overall, I think, just a misunderstanding of like kind of civic organization. And unfortunately, the Republican Party consistently takes advantage of the lack of civic education to kind of trick people into not liking the IRS because they think, oh, well, the IRS collects my taxes. Well, that is true. They do collect your taxes. They also collect other people. They also collect the taxes that you need them to, taxes from corporations, taxes from the ultra wealthy. Like these, you do not want to. It's one of those cases where it's the old saying, you bite your nose to spite your face, sort of thing. And unfortunately, this is the consequence of a very long political project to make their audience not really be interested in the process of how their country's governed, and not be interested in the mechanical half of it. Understanding the kind of broad strokes is one thing, but understand the mechanics of how these things work is complicated. I don't understand it all fully, but you kind of have to, you do have to be, I think, a little understanding of like, all right, am I always going to understand all of it? Not quite. Is it important though? Absolutely. But anyway, but either way, right, I need to get better at this. That's the one thing. I'll tell you right now, as somebody who I work in a kitchen usually, and it's not that I don't like it, but you gotta get used to stuff working in a kitchen, and you gotta use stuff here. And this is the part that I'm always unused to, which is the part where I go, if you're enjoying the show so far, I do encourage you to hit that follow button. It really helps out the channel. Also, if you want to see any more content after the stream is done or at any other point, you can head over to the YouTube channel that's linked on this page and check out some of the old VODs along with segments that I've clipped out that are a little bit more short form content. Maybe hit the subscribe button there. Might be a little bit of fun. Maybe not. I think it would be though. But any kind of help is highly appreciated, and I thank you for any of that. We're gonna go to a quick break. I'm gonna just grab some water, I think, and come back and get started on kind of the second half of the show. So I will see you in a minute or two, maybe three tops. Not very long. We'll be back. Okay. And we're back. How's it going? All right. So, let's get into the next video. Crystal Ball and Sagar Jetty are the hosts of Breaking Points, and it, kind of scrolling through, when trying to put together the show, I tend to just kind of like scroll around, see whatever's interesting. See what kind of I kind of have an idea of a few topics, but after that, it's kind of like, all right, let's kind of just, just gotta see what we want to talk about on any given day. And this one popped up, and I found it interesting. So, Biden, I guess, apparently went to the border to look at it, inspect it, give his opinion on it, for the first time in about 2 years. So, pretty much his entire presidency. Yeah, basically, yeah. So. And naturally, the right has been very interested and very dogged with their immigration woes and immigration worries. And Sagar Jetty has been. I'm actually not super sure about his immigration stances. I'm sure. I have like no doubt that it's probably somewhere in the realm of like, well, too much immigration hurts American wages and stuff like that. So let's kind of check in, see. I guess they did a video where they disagreed and kind of went back and forth. Kind of interested to see how that went. So let's go take a look, shall we? Okay.
From the left, some of the reporters and others.
Wow, Crystal looks fucking pissed already. Okay, off the bat, Crystal's like, I hate this already. Can I? Okay, this is already buffering. Cool.
Are attacking the Biden administration for effectively recreating
what
Trump's
is
policy.
Yeah.
And the Biden press secretary just completely crumbled when faced with that. Let's take a listen.
Just following up on the border, I spent a long time covering immigration stuff during the Trump years. I never saw more damning quotes from immigration advocacy groups and human rights groups during the Trump years as I saw yesterday towards this administration. Just reading one to you, Eleanor Acer, who's one of the leading advocacy people, heads up a refugee group, called what the president did yesterday a humanitarian disgrace. And that was echoed across the board in literally scores of emails I got from every humanitarian group. What does the administration say to the overwhelming consensus from people who advocate on behalf of asylum seekers and refugees and migrants that what the president did yesterday was a humanitarian disgrace?
Well, obviously we take a different.
So let's be really clear. Biden has done absolutely zero different in terms of his immigration policy, other than Trump. Quite frankly, he's adopted a lot of the worst Trump administration policies, and really hasn't done anything to come up with any kind of positive solution to the immigration problem that we have right now. Now, a lot of this has kind of been, at least it seems like, a lot of this has kind of been justified. Biden and his administration have justified not taking a harder stance on the immigration front because they don't want to catch a lot of blowback from conservatives, from moderates, whatever it has been. But unfortunately, what they've done, like a lot of Democrats always seem to do, is stake out a non-position and stake out a position of not really having an opinion and not wanting to take any kind of meaningful action. So naturally, they're pleasing nobody. They're getting no credit from the right, who continues to push that we have an open border, which we don't, and they continue to catch flack from the left and more sympathetic people from like these activist groups, because he's not fucking doing anything. And what he is doing is just kind of pushing and forwarding more of the right-wing framing of immigration in this country. So, like, not pleasing anybody. That is what Biden is doing. And you wonder why Democrats have a hard time winning elections.
View. What we would say is that this is a president who understands that safe and legal immigration into this country is a key cornerstone of our own security and prosperity.
Clearly, you can see that they just can't handle any questioning on this whatsoever. And it highlights what you were discussing, which is, look, the border's been a problem for them since day one. They basically have had no idea what to do. They kind of fought Title 42 in court, then they couldn't. And now they're recreating the Remain in Mexico policy for 3 more of the countries.
They're not recreating it, they're expanding it.
So they're expanding Remain in Mexico. And by the way, I support Remain in Mexico. I think it's probably the best solution outside of the judges. I don't think, we should just allow people to come here willy-nilly. But the point...
So, kind of already we're muddying the waters a lot. Let's keep in mind the Remain in Mexico policy. The reason why it's damaging is because you are forcing asylum seekers to essentially wait at the gates when what they are doing is fleeing danger, fleeing prosecution, and fleeing violence. So like what this isn't helping anybody. Like, people have a right to seek asylum, and they have a right to do so and be allowed to exist in a safe place. There is no reason, because this is what ends up happening. Hilariously, this whole Remain in Mexico policy, what's going to end up happening, and what has happened already, is people are forced to stay in Mexico. Mexico obviously does not have, doesn't have the resources, doesn't have doesn't have places for these refugees to stay. So what happens? We get refugee camps, we get little refugee settlements where a lot of people are kind of like half-housed in the, near the border. And while like they're not well policed, there's not government protection from either Mexico or the US, which means cartels inevitably end up infesting these areas, recruiting people for access to safe harbor in the US, or these people are coerced into cooperating while they await their time. If they were allowed to stay in the US, we probably wouldn't have a problem of basically flagging people for cartels to traffic drugs, to traffic people through. This is a system that, quite frankly, just kind of helps cartels filter through people who want to get into the US and have a clear picture of who it is that they can exploit.
Of all of this, I want to say is that whether you're left or whether you're right, this is full-blown, pure hypocrisy. And frankly, I don't think it's actually going to help him in any way. I think it's clear what's happening here. He's going to run for president again. He knows the border is a huge problem. Mm-hmm. He's trying to recreate Trump policy, but kind of appease like liberals who effectively want like open borders. And he's like, well, what do I do here?
Again, untrue. Absolutely untrue. Nobody wants open borders. I'm assuming Crystal's gonna push back, but the thing I always have a problem with is Sauger will get on here and say liberals want open borders. That's untrue. Nobody wants open borders. The problem is that the Republican Party and conservative media has pushed the definition of open borders to be essentially any kind of immigration that isn't basic legal visa, work visa immigration. They have lowered the ceiling so much to define open borders, to the point that open borders doesn't mean anything anymore. You just say open borders when you want to say too much immigration. We don't have open borders. We probably have a flow of immigration that is unsustainable. That's most likely what we have. But do we have open borders? Absolutely not. We have a process of asylum where people are allowed and legally are given the right to seek asylum from violence, from persecution, that we afford. We would afford this to anybody. But there is a understanding, or at the very least there's a belief that we have been taken advantage of by the people south of our border to the point that we shouldn't offer them asylum anymore. Ukrainians coming to America who are seeking asylum do not get this kind of do not face this kind of opposition. And the reason for that is simply because there's a perception that they're in real danger, and that those south of our border in South America and Latin America, they're bringing, or they're endangering the United States. When at the end of the day, we all have an understanding, at least to a degree, maybe some people don't, but through the proliferation of the drug war, it has given these cartels the ability to gain so much power and hold a monopoly on the industry that they run, which is the drug trafficking, which is the transportation of drugs, that they fly under the legal radar, meaning anybody in that space is implicated in illegality by the nature of their presence in that space. Meaning they can't come to the government. If you legalize drugs, if you did all of these things from a US standpoint, you would then remove the barrier people have to coming forward with their not concerns, but with their exploitation. They could go to the police and not be worried about being arrested for participating in this, when they weren't participating of their own will. They were participating by being coerced. So this open border, it's complete bullshit. Utter fucking bullshit.
I'm going to try and, create some sort of third way. But here's the thing. No Republican is going to trust Biden on the border after 2 years of what we've been happening down there. And I also don't think he's going to get any particular credit
Be back in 2 seconds.
With the left or even with Democrats for attacking it this way. And it was also a very cowardly visit, I think, in my opinion, going to just El Paso ahead of his trip to Mexico. We're about to talk about what's happening in Mexico right now ahead of its visit. But look, I mean, even Trump did more, actually, even Obama did more of an effort in actual visits down there. I mean, to the Biden administration, who have they sent? Kamala Harris down to the Northern Triangle? I mean, it's just not been a seriously treated issue.
But part of what happened is that Obama thought if he was super hardline on immigration and, deporter in chief, which he was, that would give him the political credibility to strike a deal with Republicans on immigration reform. And Republicans don't want to strike a deal on immigration reform. They like the issue. They like being able to send cameras down to the border and show thousands of people sleeping under a bridge or whatever. They like going down to some country and finding a caravan and freaking people out before midterm elections. They like having this issue remain unsolved. And so I have all kinds of issues with Biden and this policy. I think, again, Title 42 is absurd at this point. The idea that this is justified by the pandemic is stupid. People have a right to claim.
It's also hypocritical because the same people who will claim that the COVID isn't real and that it's not really dangerous and all the rest of this stuff are the exact same people who argue we need Title 42 to protect the country from immigrants who might have COVID, to which it's wait, I thought it wasn't a big deal. It either is or it isn't a big deal. And if you ask me, Title 42 during the height of the pandemic, should it have been implemented? I think there's a fair argument to say, hey, look, people can't go outside in our society. We should probably hold off adding new people to the society, no matter where they're coming from. That, I think, is fairly reasonable. But to continue it at this point is just bullshit. It's nothing but blatant. It reveals the obvious racism that motivates the Republican Party's concern over immigration. But also, let's remember, Crystal is right in the sense that the politics of this are kind of another angle you need to look at it, because the immigration status quo right now is good for Republicans. It is good for Republicans in terms of their campaigning for office, right? Like it's good for them. And the unfortunate, I'd say unfortunate, but the mistake that Democrats consistently make is perpetuating this, or at the very least believing in this idea that if they track more to the right on this or that issue, they will get credit. They will never. Nobody who registers as a Democrat will ever get credit for any immigration reform that isn't simply the exact thing that Republicans argue for. That's it. There's just none. It is all or nothing for them. The border is either open or it's the way they want it to be, which to them they'd probably say like, I just want legal immigration, to which asylum claims are, seeking asylum is legal immigration. It is the way to like basically request it like immigrate in an emergency setting. It's why it exists. And and again, the same people who make this argument will pretend that, you know, Mexico, Latin America, and South America these are the same people who in one breath will, you know, will understand, will say, will express their belief that cartels are dangerous and that cartels that run South America and Latin America and those that have a lot of political influence are dangerous, and people who live under those regimes are in a massive amount of danger. But when those people come here, when they're actually seeking refuge from that danger, suddenly those same people who recognized it before will go, oh, come on, it's not that bad. Oh, you know, they just want to come to America and yada, yada, yada. It's hypocrisy. Republicans at the end of the day have not been consistent on the immigration issue almost ever, except for the very simple stance that they want less immigrants coming to this country, specifically from our southern border. They don't have this problem when it's Ukrainians. The border might as well not even exist on our northern flank. Nobody even talks about the Canadian-American border. So, other than pretty blatant and very thinly veiled racism, that's kind of their only concern at the moment.
Asylum, the countries that we're talking about, let me give you the 4 countries that we're talking about here where the bulk of the migrants are coming from. It is Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti.
Cuba, by the way, a country where, you know, where Republicans are more than happy to exploit their voter base and to exploit their stories because they see it as an ideological battle, because they do because they play more into the Cold War propaganda that we've all heard about Cuba before. At the end of the day, when it's help, there's a reason why they don't mind Cuban refugees and they don't mind Cuban asylum seekers, because they already know that they are going to politically target these people to join their movement. And if they use the economic situation in Cuba as a way to argue against the previous regime they lived under, then they have an easy way of convincing Cubans to come to America and be Republicans. Like it's when it's in their favor, they shut the fuck up about Cubans. But, you know, Mexican refugees, or even from any of the countries she's about to mention, they don't perceive them in that same way because they're coming from, at the very least, not ideological opposing countries.
And
it's all very
Venezuela.
objective.
Okay, 3 of those 4 countries we right now have massive sanctions on, which are part of why people are so desperate. It's not the whole story, but it's a big part of why people are so desperate and wanting to.
Let's be honest. It's not the whole story, but let's be very clear. It's the plurality. Cuba and Venezuela are in the places that they're in, along with a lot of the global South. Not the global south, I'm sorry, South America and Latin America, are in the places they're in because of sanctions. Cuba is where it is because it's not allowed to participate in broadly in the world economy. That's why Cuba is the way it is. Like there's a key reason to this, and it's mostly U.S. involvement in South America.
Come here in the first place. And then Haiti, our hands are dirty. I mean, the dude we're propping up in Haiti may have had something to do with the last prime minister's
Yeah, but
death.
here's the thing. Does that mean every person that the U.S. has ever interfered with has a right to come here? Like by
No,
by
that's
that
not
standard,
no,
anyone from
but-
Iraq should be allowed to
No.
come to the United States.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of
Whoa. First of all, the right to come here is different from the right to seek refuge here. We have a governing body and we have a way to determine whose asylum claims are legitimate and whose aren't. This is simply asking for asylum to be upheld in our immigration process is just asking that people be afforded the ability to make their case. We understand this from a American legal standpoint, in which if somebody accuses you of murder, you have the right to defend yourself. And if you're fleeing violence, you have a right to seek asylum somewhere. And if you've got a strong argument, if you have evidence, if it's kind of obvious you're being targeted by a cartel, if you're being coerced to work with them against American issue, what's the word I'm looking for? Interests. Thank you. Interests. Then, like, yeah, we need a process to figure that out. But we can't just do this like, we can't just let everybody in. Like, no, like people who seek asylum, not everybody gets in. The actual percentage of people who make it through the asylum process is not that large. The largest group of people who immigrate illegally to this country do so legally with visas and overstay them. That's how people get here illegally. That's the largest number of people immigrating to this country illegally. They're coming in legally and just staying past their visas. Not this. This is fleeing from danger.
People from Iraq who should be allowed to come to the United States.
But they don't share a land border.
Look, there's two things here.
What's
Number
the difference?
one, I'm pointing out, we are to blame for a lot of the misery in these countries that is causing
yeah,
people to want to flee in the first place.
I
So
don't
if you
think we're
wanted
all
to
to
deal with the root of the problem,
It's not about all the blame. This fucking.
think that a lot of the misery in Cuba is because of us or Venezuela.
I think
sanctions
some
there,
of it. Some
Nicaragua.
of it is their problem
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
Right. So
Wait, no, all of it is their problem. Some of it is our doing. Not even, again, I'm confident in saying a plurality. If Cuba was able to participate in the modern world economy, Cuba would not be where it is right now. I am confident and will guarantee that. I would put money on that bet.
anyway, if you have people who have legitimate reasons to come here and are fleeing violence and chaos that, by the way, the war on drugs also helps to create, there are a lot of things we could do by changing our policy to make it so fewer people wanted to come here in the first place, because this is not like a fun journey that people want to undertake just for shits and giggles. That's number one. Number two, people have a right, if they have a legitimate asylum claim under our law and under international law, to file for that claim. The idea that the pandemic still now should change that is absurd at this point. But because you have Republicans who do not want to solve this issue, who like the fact that they can send cameras down there and create political upset about it at election time, you have an insane process, and then you end up for the Biden administration to signal to, the right and that they're, serious and whatever, not only recreating the Trump administration policy, but actually expanding the Trump administration.
Yeah, but I don't
policy.
think Republicans are the only people who love this issue. I think a lot of Democrats are very comfortable with the fact that millions of people can just come here illegally and stay, which I think is crazy and completely insane.
That's not a democratically held stance. The idea, what Democrats support is a reasonable immigration system where people come in, seek asylum, are heard out. If they have a legitimate asylum claim, they come here, they go through the immigration process, and they become citizens. That's it. Also, I'd like to mention, why does it matter? Why do you not want more people? Like from a like at least from my view, I'm like, wait, why wouldn't I want more people coming here? Like, why is that a bad thing? What's the issue of immigration that you're even talking about? To like, because it's like, oh, well, Democrats just want like more people coming here. Sure, I'm okay with that. Do you not want more people coming here? Aren't we supposed to be, what's the, Statue of Liberty? Give us your poor, you're sick, you're tired. Like, yeah, send me as many people as I can get. I want as many people to be fucking red-blooded Americans as can possibly be. We have we have a citizenship process. It's not fast at all. It takes years for people to become citizens, and the process is not incredibly easy, but we have a process. As long as people are going through the process, then I see no problem. And there are people who are staying here who, for whatever economic reasons or whatever social, like familial reasons, it would be really bad to send them back. Dreamers are a good case of this. Where would they go back to? You send them back, where do they go? Maybe their families are there, maybe they're not. Like, we're at a point where we can't just do we can't keep bitching about this. You have to either pick a solution and stick with it, or like either not offer citizenship, but amnesty to a lot of these people. You either offer amnesty to these people, or, and this is the other one, or you start rounding up people of questionable immigration status, and you ship them to the nearest locality, drop them off, and leave them there. Right? Those are essentially your two options. Now, you can weigh the morality of each one of those. I would bet you that one of them overall comes out a little bit better on the moral scale than the other. Not only that, but one of them would actually turn millions of people in this country into taxpayers. You understand that? That would bring in revenue for the United States through income taxes. Not only that, but once amnesty is implemented for these people, guess what? They are now eligible for the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, and each state that they live in's federal minimum or state minimum wages. So you would see an increase in wages for the simple fact that some of these businesses who operate in Texas, in California, wouldn't be able to use immigrant labor, which they rely on right now. You would absolutely see wage increases happen as immigrants are granted the same labor rights as American citizens. I don't know what the trade-off is. What's the bad thing? We're already here. These people are already here. Would you like to round them up and start like yeeting them out of the country? Does that seem like the American thing to do? Does that seem like something that is like positive for American interests? Not, at least not in my opinion.
Insane. And look, I mean, the idea that every crappy country on earth,
Because what I see is,
well, then why don't they're also not, they're the ones who have effectively allowed catch and release and gone to bat for that program over the last 20 years.
Because that's what
No, that's not catch. That's catch and
what
release.
national law determines. And the problem, the reason why you have people who stay here so long is because of this backlogged immigration system. And by the way, the overwhelming majority of people who claim asylum do show up then for their court-ordered hearings.
That's the first court hearing.
But it's
not
insane.
The actual last one.
It's insane that you have years go by that people are here, and that's true.
Sure.
And by the time that you have people who've been here for years, then to
also, this is what happens when you don't like fund your immigration process. When there's not enough judges to hear all these people, when there's not enough lawyers to represent these people, when there's not enough workers to actually work on these cases. This is something which is going to be damaging going forward if the Republicans end up gutting our like immigration departments. You're going to end up with people who, I mean, look, if you've overstayed your visa, you're in Nebraska. What do you do? Like, you're like waiting for your next, you're waiting for paperwork so that you can continue. You're working here, you've been working here for quite a while, but like, there's a lot of paperwork that has to get done. There's court hearings that you have to go to. Then you have to also, like, if you want to apply for citizenship, there's things you have to do. And all of that requires participation in, like, like any other legalizing process. Like, our system of legalization is not, this isn't the DMV where you go to the building, you wait around for a while, you do a test, you get your license, and you're done for the day, or you have to renew something. This is an ongoing multi-year, multi-level step process to simply, even if you just want to work in the US. So, like, we're talking about like a system that needs a lot of people working in it, and needs a lot of people constantly like refining and getting in contact with these people and allowing them to understand what their next step is. And if you don't know what, for all you're here legally, you're like, oh yeah, I filled out the last paperwork. Little do you know, there was some other hearing you had to go to, there was some paperwork you had to fill out, there was some form that you had to fill out. And now, because you either never got that, because it never got to you, because the systems just doesn't work like functionally, now you're sitting in a country going like, I work here, this is where my job is, this is where my family is, this is where my entire life is. I'm like, I can't leave because we can't afford to pay our rent if one of our incomes is gone, let alone if both of our incomes are gone. So what do? You're just stuck because our system is poorly constructed for our needs, quite frankly. And like, again, your options are you wave these people through, or you just start rounding people up. And I'm sorry, but that, I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think rounding up immigrants because of our failed immigration system is the way you go about this. I think that's really, really negative. I don't like that. It's fucking stupid. It's our fault that the system is as fucked as it is. So why is it like immigrants having to deal with the brunt of that?
Say, okay, well, your claim is not proper and you have to be removed. Yeah, that becomes a lot more difficult of a process. So listen, I just think it's an issue where there's a lot of dishonesty, where Republicans like the problem and don't actually want to solve it, and where a lot of our policy here in terms of sanctioning these countries exacerbates the issue so that we have more flows of migrants than we would otherwise. I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm not saying we're the only problem in these countries, but are we contributing to the problem in each one of these nations where the bulk of the migrants are coming from? 100%.
Yes, I just think that a lot of
based all of that, absolutely. We are causing a certain level of instability in these countries, the same way we did in the Middle East. And as a consequence, these people are fleeing to, if you're if you're on the Western Hemisphere, where else are you gonna go? If you're in somewhere in South America that's been, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Destabilized by the US's involvement in elections and in the governing of your country. Where else are you gonna go? You could go to Canada, but guess what? You have to get around the US to get to Canada. And the US at the end of the day is going to be your closest shot to getting out of your situation. So, I mean, you're kind of left with like the US or nothing, especially if you're here.
These countries have agency. Nicaraguans, Daniel Ortega, like, we didn't create Daniel Ortega. He created Daniel Ortega. Like, there are many countries in Central America which are doing fine. Costa Rica and many others. It's not like a complete cause on behalf of the US. They happen to be benefited by the fact.
So this is also a misunderstanding that like not everybody goes, like not everyone comes to the US. A large number does, but that's because we're a large country. At the end of the day, like all the smaller Latin American and South American countries can only take so many people. Like they can only take so many people. The US, on the other hand, has a much higher stock of space, basically, to allow people to move into. So like, yeah, like Like, we can afford to take in more people. We're fine. We're not struggling for people. Right now in the US is an entire conversation about if Americans are reproducing enough. Well, if we're not reproducing enough, meaning we're not creating more people here, then obviously there's space for more people to be here. So why not? Like, we can afford to have them. Have you ever been to Texas? Do you know how much space, you know how much empty space is in the state of Texas? Quite a bit.
Fact that they can march here from across Mexico, which I don't think is fair, actually, if you think about the rest of the country. Look, this is a difference of opinion. I don't think you have a right to come here. And under some of these asylum
It's a difference of
standards,
policy.
they're absurd. Like, if
It's a difference of opinion, but it's also a difference of policy. Sagar's policy is like, well, I just don't want any, I don't want any more people because I don't think it's our problem. Well, like, we have immigration no matter what. It's not that it's our problem. It's that we allow immigration into this country. Therefore, we shouldn't be restricting it to certain groups just because we're like, I don't know, I don't really feel like it. Like, no, like, and again, it doesn't matter. Like, why don't you want them here? What's so bad about people from any of these countries?
somebody says they're fleeing domestic violence. Look, I have a deep sympathy with anybody fleeing domestic violence.
But
that doesn't mean you get to come to the United States. There's 1 billion people on Earth who are suffering domestic violence by one standard from the Human Rights Campaign. You're gonna allow 1 billion people?
But do you agree that
here?
there are
Like,
certain
no.
Wait, but if that's the solution, then you're gonna deny them that? Like, I'm not saying that there's no domestic violence in the US, but if you're facing domestic violence and your locality, your local police or your local I guess your local police or even your local government is not interested in investigating that, probably because if you're fleeing domestic violence, that person's probably part of a cartel who will fucking kill you if you escalated it past the police that they've already paid off and the police that's already bought into the cartel. Then, like, what are you supposed to do? What, you're just fucked. You're just fucked. You're just fucked. You're just fucked. At the end of the day, again, like, these are international rights. We've all agreed to them. People have a right to seek asylum. The only reason, like the reason why it's just, we share a land border with these people. So yeah, we're gonna get more of them. If you don't like that, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Like, so maybe move to Europe, and then you can get immigrants from, different European countries if you like those better. I don't know what to tell you.
Asylum claims that are justified.
I
For
think
example, you
some-
brought up Daniel Ortega,
Yeah.
who is known to persecute his political
Some, you mean out of like what, millions? Do you know what even some out of 1 million is going to be like probably hundreds of thousands? Like, what is this?
enemies.
Okay, his political enemies, sure, but if you're an average economic migrant, maybe. And then look, even the
but what
Biden
is the core?
standard.
I don't deny that
Yeah.
there are a lot of people and human traffickers who exploit the fact that we have these massive backlogs in the system and bring people here basically on the promise that you're basically going to get to stay. You just have to say the magic words and you're going to get to stay. There are two ways you solve that, because people do have a right when they have legitimate asylum claims based on our law and international law. They have a right to make those claims and have them adjudicated. There are two core issues here. Number one, the way that we are screwing over these countries ourselves and making it more likely that you have more migrant flows. And again, you can look at the 4 countries where most migrants are coming from and see how much of a direct impact we ultimately have. And two, if you end this backlog, which I know you also support, then you get rid of this effective loophole that enables people who don't have justifiable asylum claims to come here and feel like they're going to be able to stay indefinitely. To me, that seems like the two core issues. And, I'm sure there are plenty of Democrats who are bad faith on this. The Republicans certainly aren't interested in solving the problem. And so you end up with a disgusting humanitarian disaster like what the Biden administration is ultimately
I can agree that it's
getting
just
on
not
board
fair
with
to
here.
anybody. I mean, I have sympathy for poor people in another country who say, hey, if you pay $50,000, I can get you to America. Like, yeah, I have a lot of sympathy. My parents came here to this country for for very similar reasons, for economic opportunity. I get it. What I'm saying is the system has to be the system has to have some merit, and actually what you're seeing is that you have a deep suspicion of many people, including myself, of the entire immigration system, because I think it's been made a mockery of over the last 20 years, specifically with some of these policies. And I do want to.
Well, I don't know what that. Yeah, like, what do you mean? Like, do you mean the concept of immigration, the concept that we should allow anybody who isn't a native born citizen into this country? This would devastate. This kind of mindset would devastate our economy. If you, like, you know, by the wave of a wand, got rid of all immigration, or at least all illegal immigration, you would destroy an entire sector of our economy, because that labor force then wouldn't exist. There's a certain amount of labor that we need, that we have used over the last, 4 or 5 decades to become the economic powerhouse that we are today. So, like, you know, and while I don't agree with the way that we've gotten there, there is a way to ameliorate that, which is offer amnesty, or more, you know, if you don't want to do that, we need to refine the way that people, that people apply and go through the citizenship process. At the end, we also, quite frankly, need to open up better relations with Mexico in terms of, like, how the border functions. Because Mexico as a country is not interested in protecting our border. They don't give a shit. People are already in their country. You know, they're functioning however they're functioning, but they don't give it. If those people cross over to America, Mexico's not concerned with them. They're like, that it's not my problem. That's your problem to fucking deal with. And there needs to be kind of a more communal relationship between the US, Canada, Mexico, and quite frankly, the rest of the Western Hemisphere. There should be no reason. There should be absolutely no reason why the United States should not be able to have an EU-style relationship with Canada, with Mexico, with Latin America at a bare minimum, to reduce the influence and the ability to operate by these cartels. Like, there's no excuse for it.
I want to say, Crystal, I hate to say it, but I do think a lot of people like the fact that millions of people are coming here illegally, because once you're here, we all know how difficult it is to get them out, and they want to legalize them, and I think they want to get them to vote. And I'm not saying this in a conspiratorial, like...
That is the conspiracy, though. You can say I'm not saying conspiratorial. That's just the, what is it? That's just the, Great Replacement. That's all that is. That's all that is. I don't want people to vote. I want everybody to vote. I don't give a shit. Also, that is, like, it's deeply, I don't even know if I want to say racist, because it's not racist so much as it's deeply ignorant to simply assume that people from South America are just immediately and inherently going to be voting for Democrats. Republicans understand this in the context of Cubans. They market specifically their political messages to Cubans when they come over to this country. Why they're unwilling to do that for Mexican and South American immigrants, I'm not 100% sure. But it's curious that they're somehow not, they have this just innate belief that, like, if a Venezuelan fucking immigrant comes over, they are by default voting for a Democrat, which they're not. The only reason they would vote for Democrats over Republicans is because Republicans are incredibly callous with the way they approach immigration and asylum specifically. That's why they would vote for Democrats. And at the end of the day, I don't want, like, no Democrat, and certainly not I, am interested in these people coming over so that they can vote. We already have enough voters. I don't need more voters. The left doesn't need more voters. I don't know if you heard, but we win every election by by the popular vote. Every single time a Republican has not won the popular vote in cycles, I don't know how long, but quite a fucking while. I'm not worried about voters. That's not what I'm concerned with. So you can stop with this nonsense of like, you just want them to vote for you. Well, no, I don't need them to. I already got more voters than you. I'm already, brother, I'm already sitting on the bleachers waiting for you to finish the fucking race. The only reason Republicans win elections in 2023 is because of gerrymandering, and it is because of the Electoral College in terms of the presidential race. So no, I do not need fucking Mexicans, Venezuelans, Hondurans. I don't need any of y'all to come here and vote Democrat. We're good. Our side of the aisle is good when it comes to a popular vote counting. We gonna be all right? But like, it's just nonsense. It's conspiratorial, and it's, quite frankly, you know, depending on your shade and depending on who you're talking to, they might just be concerned, or they might just be a white supremacist.
Racial way. I'm saying I think that they like the fact that people are coming here. They have the entire, like, oh,
It's funny because you never also, by the way, you never hear this when it comes to European immigration. Are Republicans are Republicans as vocal about European immigration? They're not, right? They're not interested in European immigration. And why, even though, shouldn't that be the number one group that they should be concerned about? Europeans in general are farther left than a good decent part of the US. If you actually wanted to source democratic left-leaning votes, you would champion and you would encourage immigration from Europe, because you want Europeans with their egalitarian socialized Medicare systems to come here and push those values here. But Democrats don't do that, partially because people in those countries aren't really interested in living in America. But some people do immigrate from here, and you would think that would be a concern for Republicans, but somehow it never comes up. Somehow they're never interested in European immigration, even though Europeans are more left-wing. Like,
immigrants are the people who have more children. So actually, this is the way that we have to solve our demographic crisis. I think there's some truth to that. But look, I mean the truth is, I think they like that they're coming here.
I do think that is conspiratorial.
Then why continue the policy?
Because you ultimately, I mean, the people who have really actually tried to come to some sort of immigration deal, which always includes more border enforcement and more border patrol, have been Democrats. I mean, they have been the ones who have actually offered some. Even Joe Biden offered some sort of package of here's how we're going to deal with this issue ultimately. And, there is no interest from Republicans in ultimately.
If I remember correctly, like during the Trump administration, they didn't even finish the wall. They didn't do shit on immigration. So like,
solving this problem. So I'm not washing Democrats' hands of culpability here, but I do think it's conspiratorial, this idea that they just want to like ship in a bunch of illegals and make them vote for Democrats. Latinos are not even voting for Democrats like overwhelmingly anymore. So the, racial demographic argument here.
That's not 100% true. Like Latinos are still voting at higher rates for Democrats. It is dwindling. But like at the end of the day, there's still. Notice though, as the Latino vote starts to shift a little bit more right, Republicans haven't gotten any less hawkish on immigration. Notice that. They haven't taken their foot off the gas whatsoever. And that should tell you that they're not interested in the electoral angle of this. The whole like Democrats want to bring people in because they'll vote for him. Funny, they're actually voting for you more, but you still don't want them here, which means you don't want them in your caucus, which means there's a good chance you're just fucking racist.
here doesn't even really add up anymore.
I don't even care about the racial part. What I'm really saying is that I think
Naturally,
there's a lot of people
naturally.
who are very comfortable.
A lot of
with the
people who
fact
don't
that
care about the
millions of
racial
people have to come
aspect,
here illegally,
but
and
yet
they are
constantly
very
push the
okay with-
racial
look,
rhetoric.
Non-starter for every single Democratic immigration
Who
deal is
voted?
comprehensive immigration reform, which effectively means every single person who's here illegally gets to stay and becomes a citizen.
Who
I have a big
voted-
problem with that.
Who voted ultimately for more judges
Why do you care?
to adjudicate these claims? I mean, this is actually something that the Biden
What I also don't understand is why would you care about who gets to be like if Sagar, I think Sagar was born here, but as an immigrant myself, I don't give two fucking shits about who else also becomes a citizen. No interest whatsoever. None whatsoever. Why do you? Why do you care about that so much? Why is that so like concerning to you?
administration was pushing. So again, the thing that leads to people staying here so long under the system
Matt Taibbi
is
book. That's
this
cringe.
backlog. That should be something everyone could agree on to ultimately solve it, but I see zero political interest ultimately in resolving the issue.
I do agree it will not happen.
Hey guys, ready or
Well, that was certainly a heated back and forth. Good God. Yeah. When it comes to immigration is not a one size fit all kind of topic, but unfortunately, there are people, there are office holders right now who want to campaign on the issue of immigration and don't want to solve it because it's better it's better for them to campaign on it and never solve it. There are people who are outside of our political bodies, our governmental bodies, that want to see this thing solved because the constant debate doesn't do them any good. Most of those are the actual people seeking asylum. But what we need to decide, what we need to hurry up and decide, at least in my opinion, is what are we gonna do? Are we kicking all these people out, or are we figuring out a way for them to stay here and assimilate into the legal apparatuses? It's one or the other. There is no we can't really do this half measure bullshit anymore. And Republicans who want to do the whole oh well, we really want to add all this border security. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Border security, you've had all this border security this entire time. It hasn't made a difference. And at the end of the day, border security is not the thing. Again, the majority of people who are here illegally are here because they overstay their visas, not because they break into the country. So border security makes almost no sense in this context. It's just it is the thing they throw out as a material argument when they don't want the problem to get solved. But either way, anyway, if you've enjoyed of any of what you've seen, I'd really appreciate if you hit that follow button. And if you want to see any more content from me, you can head down to the YouTube channel that's linked under me somewhere down there to find my YouTube channel. On there, there's segments that you can watch and previous VODs if you ever want to watch those. Those get deleted from Twitch every 14 days. So if you ever want to see any of the older content, they're always up on my YouTube channel. So yeah, go ahead, give that a subscribe if you can afford it. But yeah, let's just continue on with the show. What am I looking for? There it is. So, okay. Let me think about this. I think we should save. Okay, we're gonna save Ben. I'm thinking. No, wait, no. Should we save Ben? No. We'll do Ben. We're gonna try to squeeze Ben and Matt into here towards the end. But so Ben Shapiro, founder of the Daily Wire and a guy of discerning taste. It seems like there was some discourse over the difference between transracialism and transgenderism, which an interesting topic. I'm curious to see what Ben has to say about this. So let's take a look. Since Ben already has a dwindling understanding of the difference between sex and gender, I'm not really sure if he's going to be capable of like trying to differentiate these two things. But this has been a topic that's like actually kind of complicated in my opinion. It's kind of a lot. It's a lot to kind of take in, and you kind of have to. The hardest thing is wading through kind of your own personal biases with it, and your own personal like knee jerk, like, oh, that's really different. I'm not sure about that, because the transracialism stuff is, you know, not to give my stance away on it early or anything, but like, that's my opinion. Is you know, so let's kind of hear Ben's take on this one.
Have to give you the dumbest and most hilarious story of the day. I do love this story. According to the UK Daily Mail,
Ooh,
photos obtained by the Daily Mail show a white person named Kay LeClaire was able to transform herself over the course of just 2 years from a white college student to an indigenous two-spirit, fooling even some in the Native American community. LeClaire identified themselves on Facebook as a white woman in July 2017 as they spoke of they nuptials with Adam Pagenkopf the following summer. By 2019, they publicly identified as a Native American two-spirit, which is a term many indigenous people use to describe a non-binary gender identity.
Right.
Now, I do have to point out here.
Okay, yes. So in some indigenous communities and around the world, the idea of somebody being non-binary is not controversial. It's really not that interesting. Really only in the Western, very what's the I'm trying to think of like the kind of term for like all of the Abrahamic religions. That's what I was thinking. In a lot of the Abrahamic kind of religions and kind of frame of worldviews, non-binary as a like identity is a lot more abnormal. Whereas, you know, you go to indigenous communities and like different communities in South America, I believe also, you'll find that non-binary individuals throughout like human history is not all that uncommon. So when people say like, oh, like, you know, non-binary people and trans people are this new thing that's happened all of a sudden, that's not true. Transgender people, like trans folks, have been around since the dawn of time, basically. Same with non-binary folks, basically, like up until the point in which humans started understanding and exploring gender, there's always been people who have not aligned perfectly with the duality of like man and woman. Man and woman as a concept is rather you know, Western oriented and Western centered. You know, we have thousands of years of history of humans acting in different ways. So when they do this whole like, well, you know, like that's how it's always been. No, that's not how it's always been. That's how it's always been around you and people who are like you. But the rest of the world is different, and there's differences between all of us. But anyway.
Not only is this absurd and silly on its face, it is hysterical that the media has to continue calling this obviously female person a they, but can also point out they're not Native Americans. If a person says, I'm a Native American two-spirit and I wish to be called they, instead of everybody just saying, we're not going to pay attention to any of that, we're just going to call you a white lady because you're a white lady. Instead, the media is like, no, we will call you they. We're just going to draw the line and say that you're indigenous. The good news for Kayla Claire is...
Well, here's the thing. Being non-binary and wanting to be referred to with neutral pronouns is like, you're saying the same thing. Like, I believe that I am, you know, somebody who identifies as non-binary would like to not be labeled as one or the other, but as a neutral term. That's not really all that hard. And if I understood him correctly, because I did him at 1.25 speed, good God, he talks fast if that's him at 1.25. But let's go back. I heard him mention the two-spirit thing, which I think is important.
Pagenkopf the following summer. But by 2019, they publicly identified as a Native American two-spirit, which is a term many indigenous people use to describe a non-binary gender identity.
Okay, so what you're telling me, okay, that's what I thought he said. So essentially, this person is non-binary. They would like to be identified as non-binary and are now adopting a historical frame to view, to kind of understand or contextualize that identity choice that they've made. That makes sense. Now, let's go forward. That makes sense. So far, everything is aligning in a pretty benign and uninteresting way. Like, so far, this person's non-binary. They read a book about indigenous people that also have a term for non-binary people. They were like, hey, that's me. I'm so far, nothing controversial, nothing really all that interesting so far.
Indigenous. The good news for Kay LeClaire is that eventually she'll
also, I don't think it doesn't sound like let's keep going.
Presumably being a senator from Massachusetts. That's the way this works. If you pretend to be Native American, then you can run for president eventually. LeClaire went on to co-found
you can pretend to do a lot of things and run for president. That is the thing you can do.
American art from Etsy.
You can also pretend to be a film critic and film writer and create and have shitty film opinions and have a news broadcast. You can do a lot of things simultaneously, Ben Shapiro.
Which they would pass off as their own and sell to unsuspecting buyers. Man, wokeness, they say go woke, go broke, but the truth is that if you're talking about catering Native American art from Etsy, works. If you pretend to be Native American, then you can run for president eventually. LeClaire even went on to co-found a queer indigenous artists collective in Wisconsin and started buying Native American art from Etsy, which they would pass off as their own and sell to unsuspecting buyers. Man, wokeness.
Okay, that is cringe.
Go woke, go broke, but the truth is that if you're talking about catering to a particularly stupid crowd, go woke, make a little bit of money.
Little bit. Have you seen the numbers for Captain Marvel? Little bit of money. This guy, I'm glad he's admitting that go woke, get broke, or whatever the fuck it is, was always a bullshit term. Go woke, make a fuck ton of money because more people agree with you. Go conservative when you want to exploit an incredibly small niche of people who you're just going to reinforce their already held beliefs and just continue to farm money off of by, selling like nonsense drugs and just kind of exploiting their fear of the rest of the world.
Go woke, claim victimhood, you do okay. It used to be in the more racist days of the United States that people in order to escape
the more racist days
would sometimes attempt to pass as members of the white race. Right? And that was an indicator of the evils of America's racial caste system. And there's a real thing that used to happen. Now you have white people attempting to pass themselves off as members of minorities, which should tell you something about the social circumstances surrounding race in the United States, right?
Wait, but I thought this was happening in the UK. It doesn't matter that much, I guess. But yeah, people who are minorities used to pass themselves off as white so that they could not be what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Put upon by others. Like they were that was self-defense. What we're talking about here and what this person is demonstrating is being cringe. That's what this person is so far, is being a bit cringy. Which, I mean, it's cringeworthy, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. I don't really think this is, this feels like a reach, but okay.
Right now, you don't see a lot of black Americans attempting to pass themselves off as white, but you do see a lot of white Americans attempting to pass themselves off as members of minorities to thereby gain victimhood status in the new racial hierarchy of intersectionality. Some in the Native community have...
Intersectionality is just the understanding that there's not always one clean force bearing down on anybody, in that there are multiple different forces. Like if you're black and a woman, you are there are issues that will there not struggles, but there are issues that you're going to face that flow between both things. There's going to be the issue of not being taken seriously because you're black, but also not being taken seriously because you're a woman. These are, these aren't, intersectionality is just about not having rigid structures for certain, for certain social drawbacks, I suppose.
Have now said they had their suspicions about Leclerc, who went from a light-haired brunette to a tan woman with dark hair over the course of just a few years. Leclerc was ultimately forced to step down from their community positions last month, after it came to light that they were actually a pretendian, a term natives use for people who pretend to have indigenous lineage.
Ooh,
it's
fun.
unclear whether they will face charges for their false claims, as profiting off a false Native American identity is a federal crime. By the way, that's kind of fascinating, that if you profit off a false Native identity, that's somehow a federal crime. But if you profit off another false identity, like saying pretending you're a man or a two-spirit, or you're a man, you pretend you're a woman, that's not a federal.
No, those would be gender identities. You're allowed to do that. If you're profiting off of like a racial identity, so this also gets into the difference between, like, when it's talking about federal law, I would presume that we're also talking about relationships with indigenous communities in what's the word, on reservations. So there's also an aspect of it where reservations most likely also have specific laws against this sort of stuff, mainly because they're very isolated communities whose economy are usually reliant on the authentic output of some of their cultural artifacts, possibly, or, like that sort of stuff. So I can there's probably laws. I would assume that the laws have to do with, like, kind of reservation agreements.
Crime. Advanced Smite, a hobbyist genealogist, has laid out how Leclerc has claimed to have Meti Oneida, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Cuban, and Jewish heritage. A little bit of Jewish at the end, just for the fun of it. The anonymous genealogist told Madison 365 they first became aware of Leclerc through a Facebook ad for the upcoming talk on indigenous feminism. It identified Leclerc under her native name, Nibiwakamigkwi, which Advanced Smite said they found unusual.
Admittedly, this is how I would probably have to say that as well.
Because given
I would have to like do my entire body also to be able to read some of that.
Ojibwe name is typically something that would be just used in ceremony or with other people who are Ojibwe or a part of your community. It's weird that you're publicly using it. Advanced Smite, who is also of indigenous heritage, conducted some research and found that while Leclerc is a common Native American last name, there were social media posts in which they identified as Anishinaabe. The genealogist then discovered that Leclerc had previously claimed to be Cuban. So this person seems to be some sort of sociopath seeking
to... Wait, so this person doesn't actually genuinely think they're Native American. They just do this. Wait, so what's the... Okay, so here's the problem. I came into this video thinking we would have a conversation, or Ben would at least have something interesting to say about the concept of transracialism, and I'm sure he was going to tie that in to transgenderism. Unfortunately, what Ben has done is kind of something you always see, where you pick out like one person being really cringe and being really just kind of embarrassing, and you use that person as an example of, kind of like this transracialism. I don't really think this person thinks they are transracial. It just sounds like they are exploiting different groups to make some money. That's really it. That's all this really looks like, which isn't really that, whatever, who cares? This happens in America and in capitalism. Regardless, like, this isn't okay. Somebody has been exploiting Native American culture, and probably it sounds like Cuban and, maybe Jewish was like her next target. But any of these cultures, by just kind of fake assimilating, making some money, and fucking off. Yeah, sorry, this isn't Ben. This isn't the transracial example that you're looking for. the transracial stuff is an interesting conversation, but this is clearly not. We're not getting any of that here.
To take advantage of
this is somebody with a financial
status
motive, not somebody with
America.
a like
this is bizarre.
Actual.
It's bizarre stuff. And again,
it's not bizarre. It's not bizarre. Ben's making it sound like it's, but no, it's not. It's just money-seeking behavior. That's all this is. This is just money-seeking behavior. That's all this is. If anything, Ben should be absolutely understanding of the idea of selling one's identity for profit, since Ben consistently makes it a point to forward his Judaism, which I got no problem with. It's fine. Jewish people are cool. Love Jewish people. But like, Ben, you understand the identity game that you're playing. This person was just playing it in a rather unsophisticated manner. But that's all that's all that's happening here. This isn't
being, because there are lots of crazy people in the United States, and much more about
a lot of crazy people in the
incentive structure in the United States right now. The supply of racism does not meet the demand for racism. And so people are now claiming to be members of my...
Yeah, no, okay. I'm not even going to bother with this because this is just stupid. This isn't an actual case of transracialism. It's not. It's money-seeking behavior. That's all this really is. You know, that person was primarily interested in making some money. I think that's fairly obvious. Okay, we're gonna try this at 2. But yeah, the transracial issue, I'd be interested. I really, you know, if anybody's watching this, if you know somebody who, like, I don't know, is involved in any of this, or you know, or knows somebody, I would love to hear any kind of like argument one way or another. It's an interesting conversation. It's like I feel like I feel like people would probably, I feel like a lot of people would kind of like scoff at the idea of even like having the conversation, but I do think it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting angle to kind of look at human identity and how we what's the word, and how we go about perceiving ourselves in the world through others' eyes. That's all. But yeah, that's not what this woman's doing. That woman's, again, money-seeking behavior. It's kind of all that was. But all right, we're gonna finish. We're gonna try to finish here. Let me save. We'll do this. Save a few of these because this is all gonna kind of be under the same realm. So, Andrew Tate, because we're on that part of the show now. So, Andrew Tate is a guy who, on the internet, gives really shitty advice to men on the internet. You know, at the end of the day, Andrew Tate, that's kind of what he's done. He, you know, I know he was running a like a cam girl scam thing or whatever, but you know, targeting kind of the same men that he was targeting when he did his like "I'm here for the fellas" sort of stuff. Either way, the dude gives out shitty advice. I don't think the way that he approaches and the way that he encouraged people to approach interpersonal relationships is helpful. And for that, you know, we've been kind of, I've said I've made it a point of kind of speaking to a little bit of that as much as I can. But luckily, it seems like, you know, some of his, that A1 Matt Walsh has reached out to his audience and, you know, kind of, you know, raised his hand as being the person that they should be going to, you know, look for that same kind of advice. So I kind of want to see what his, you know, I kind of want to see what he's, you know, what he's going for here. But 1 second, let me, got like one thing I got to do. Let's see. just want to change the title. You know, I've been told that like it's a good idea to change the title on the you know, whenever you're certain, you know, certain things. What is going on? Okay. Oh, we are good. Yes. Okay. Anyway, let's get started. We kind of got to go a bit quick here, but let's get into this. Since this is the guy who wants to be the next one.
With a discussion about the crisis of...
Holy shit. Okay, we definitely can't do that at... let's try 1.5.
We opened the show yesterday with a discussion about the crisis of masculinity and the rise of Andrew Tate. And to very briefly summarize the key points made in that conversation, boys are growing up in a culture that is openly hostile to masculinity, and many are forced to navigate the minefield without the benefits of strong male role models to show them the path. And this crisis...
For the most part, I'd say that's true. For the most part, I would say that's true.
This is self-perpetuating. It grows exponentially because the young men with absentee fathers eventually become absentee fathers themselves, repeating the cycle indefinitely unto infinity. And into
also, that's where I disagree. I don't think we have a problem of absentee fathers. That's not really the problem here. The problem is that men in 2023 are not equipped with the ability to enter society and create valuable relationships, interpersonal relationships with women or with the people that they want to have those relationships with in a successful manner. That's the actual problem here.
This field of confusion and man hatred steps guys like Andrew Tate and others, quickly earning an enormous following of young men who understandably flock to somebody who has a message that embraces masculinity rather than treating it like a disease. Andrew.
So here's another big thing. Masculinity. Let's be clear. Masculinity as a definition is not static. The masculinity that Matt Walsh advocates for and what Andrew Tate advocates for is the exact same masculinity that people have been advocating for probably the last 100 years. It is a version of masculinity which in 2023 is outdated, and more importantly is it's not what you need right now. Masculinity, you know, this frame of masculinity that these guys talk about is an old one. Is not a if you're a guy right now, if you're in high school, or even if you're like starting college, you would not want to be learning from 50-year-old textbooks. You would not want to be learning from 60-year-old, 80-year-old teachers who haven't been to a modern website. At the end of the day, what masculinity needs as a social construct, and that's what it is, masculinity, and the concept of masculinity and the concept of being a man needs to be less static and needs to be fit for the correct time. Being somebody like Andrew Tate or Matt Walsh, who don't respect women in the way that is in an equal manner, I would say, I guess I would say, will not provide you, will not garner you success, will not garner you the relationships you're looking for. The advice Andrew Tate gives you will not give you the results you want. It would have 100 years ago. It won't now. And I know that's it sucks. But what we're talking about, masculinity, how men function in society, these things are not static. These things are not what's the word? Are not these hard scientific laws. Masculinity is not gravity. So having a centuries old understanding of what masculinity is will not bring you the results you're looking for. It simply won't. In approaching other people, with that mindset will not bring you success. So, you know.
Andrew Tate, very often good at identifying.
Also, I just want to say, I understand that there are women, there are feminists in the world who hate men. This is 100% a thing. There are many of them out there that just hate men. You will not ever be able to counter that in a positive fashion by just hating women. By mirroring that attitude, you don't solve any of the problems you would like to solve. You don't change the discourse, and you certainly don't push yourself forward as an individual to creating a better world, which is the thing you should want to be doing as a man or woman for that matter. But as a man, I think there's an expectation that we affect the world in a positive manner. So if that's part of your conception of masculinity, you should want a solution that brings forward positivity.
The problems
Positive
in our culture
outcomes.
as they pertain to the situation that men face, and deserves credit for speaking up in defense of masculinity rather than denigrating it and calling for its eradication, essentially. But in my view, he misses the mark when it comes to the remedy. He seems to basically understand the disease, but he doesn't have the right prescription for it, or at least the full prescription. Yes, men should reject the programming that our culture wants to subject them to, programming which seeks to neuter and feminize them. Yes, they should.
So this is Matt Walsh pretends that it's programming. It's not programming. It's what we're talking about very simply is, do you assimilate to modern society or do you not? Would you like to participate in modern society or would you not? There is no, there's no programming that's happening here. What we are seeing in today's world is simply that being a certain type of man in 1932 is, being X kind of man will get you, a wife with a white picket fence and kids and da-da-da-da-da. But it doesn't do that anymore. It's not going to. So you wasting your time and you trying to brute force this not just this mindset, but this worldview, this way to approach people. Is damaging. It's not going to result in good, and it's only going to serve to make you more frustrated and make you more angry because you're going to try harder and harder in a way that's not going to be helpful, in a way that's not going to be productive. There is no programming. It's simply like Matt wants to make this Matt wants to make this about changing you. And guess what? You should change. You should. You should grow as a person. You should change as a person. The person you are at 16 should not be the person you are at 9 and should not be the person you are at 28. As a human, you should seek to change, to evolve, and to grow, and to understand more. And with more context, come to different outcomes. Sometimes, or come to different solutions. Sometimes you won't. And that's okay. But you need to be open to that. So.
Work hard. They should take care of their minds and their bodies. Yes, they should strive for success, including financial success. But a life of hedonism and materialism and luxurious wealth, remaining unmarried while sleeping with dozens of different women and so on, is not the ideal to strive towards.
He's right. He's right in the sense that it depends on what you're looking for. If you want all of those things, if you want to have multiple partners, if you want to be more free with your sexual activity, by all means, go forth. Free country, you do what you want. But again, if that's not what you're looking for, which is mostly what Andrew Tate is offering, is a very is this weird solution of being a misogynist and being kind of an asshole to attract more women, but that's not what you want. You want a functional relationship. I don't know that many guys who are Andrew Tate fans who want these kind of frivolous relationships. They want real relationships. But the only thing he can offer them is shallow, meaningless ones.
Rather, what men are called to and created for, and the only sort of life that will be truly happy, that they'll find true happiness and joy in.
You're not called to anything. That might be hard to hear. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I'm not sure. But you're not called to do anything. And the sooner you start living your life for you and not for, you know, not for other people's expectations of you, the happier you will start to become. When you start making decisions based on what you want for your life and what you want for your for your future, and not you're not concerned with what your church wants, you're not concerned with what your parents want, you're not concerned with what your what your societal function is. Focus on you and what you want and the impact you want to leave behind.
Is a life of service as protector and provider. Men, the vast majority of men anyway, are called to be husbands and fathers, to be leaders of their families. Now, they may be called to lead in other ways too, but first they must care for their families. If there's any saving our civilization at this point, which I think there is, but if there is, this is how it will be done. And this is who will do it. It's not going to be saved by influencers who are sitting in front of cameras, whether the guy in front of the camera is Andrew Tate or me or anyone else.
Or me.
It'll be saved through the formation and preservation of strong, intact, loving, and well-led families.
Now, he is right in the broad strokes, wrong in the specifics, because men are not required to be the leaders. They're not required to be, they're not called to service. None of that. Fellas, all you're called to is to take care of you and take care of your loved ones. That doesn't mean always being the breadwinner. That doesn't mean always being the leader. What that is understanding your place and being fluid enough in how you operate to fit as many situations as possible. That means, for me, an aspect of my masculinity personally is being a calming force. What that means to me is during times of either hardship, strife, or like a lot of times it ends up at work, just generally being a lot of high stress situations, a value that something that I draw value from in my conception of masculinity is being calm, is being a calm voice, is being not necessarily a leader all the time. Sometimes I am the leader and sometimes I'm not. And an understanding of where you're fitting in while doing your thing, whether that's being calm, whether that's being the planner, whether that's being any of those type of roles in stressful situations. Understanding your role is the best thing you can do to stay true to you, not over encumber yourself with all of the rest of this nonsense, while drawing value from your experiences.
That is the only way. It is the only way forward. If every man in the country starts going to the gym and starts making lots of money and starts having sex with lots of
these are all outcomes, but okay.
Attractive women, and yet they don't get married and stay married and have children and raise and love those children, then we will still be headed to ruin. It'll be a slightly different kind of ruin, but ruin all the same.
So what Matt is defending is not happiness and is not fulfillment. What Matt is defending right now is the simple institution of marriage. That's it. That's the only thing he is defending right now. He's not looking out for men. He's not looking out for society. What he is defending an institution where he finds, where in his conception, men are the leaders. There is no version of a marriage for him where a man isn't the leader that is good. And that is damaging. It's damaging because it leaves men and, young men who listen to somebody like Matt Walsh with an inability to understand an interpersonal relationship without being the main, a dominant force. It requires that even in a framework of communal living, that men should still be at the be the authority figure. And again, it is this constant, you always have to be the leader, you always have to do this, you don't always have to do any of that stuff. The rest of that is how you conceptualize it. You need to pick that for yourself.
Those men themselves will ultimately find the happiness that they are able to derive in that lifestyle. They'll find that it's shallow and it's fleeting. And in the end, they'll die alone, loved by no one, loving no one, remembered by no one, leaving no legacy behind. The feminized and neutered and effeminate man that our left-wing culture seeks to create, and then this other sort of man, both unmarried, both childless.
It's funny. The feminine man, the thing he just described, left-wing men. Fun fact, happier. For everything that he said, as much as he doesn't like the feminization of men, as much as he doesn't like men who are feminists, like myself, would you like to know the difference between me and someone like Andrew Tate? I'm happy. Does Andrew Tate seem happy to you? Not really. I mean, he's always angry. He's always yelling. He's always complaining. He's always, he's always clearly emotionally affected by his interactions with women and lashes out in a violent way. Why am I happy and he's not? Even though he's got more than me, technically. It's not because I'm married. I'm not married yet. But it is because I approach interpersonal relationships and my romantic interpersonal relationships in a less toxic and more healthy manner. Matt Walsh can put all of the negative adjectives he'd like to, but at the end of the day, people on the left, people who are married, people who are, even more leftist, feminist adjacent men are happier.
Will look very similar in the end, having taken two very different paths just to arrive together at essentially the same place. It's the family man, the devoted father and husband, whose different path actually leads to a different and much better conclusion.
This is a meme. That's all this is. Understand, what he's giving you is just dogma and is just, I'm going to tell you the thing that you think is the ideal is right. But, there's no, how many men are unhappy in their marriage? Even though their marriage is, for all intents and purposes, the ideal, form of marriage. That's not what, format, marriage in and of itself does not bring happiness.
Now, I've, of course, been preaching this message for as long as I've had an audience to preach to, and I have found that there are two or three basic responses or rebuttals, I guess, that I always hear from young men who may, for the most part, line up with me ideologically, but who doubt the wisdom of the get married and have kids prescription. And I was greeted with these same responses after the show yesterday and many messages and comments. What I'd like to do today is answer the objections, or at least what seems to be the one principal objection.
Mm-hmm.
The claim that I so often hear is that, well, marriage and family life is a trap. It's a scam, especially for men. The whole thing is rigged against us. There is nothing for a man.
Yeah, so men, in the conception of what Matt Walsh is talking about, is the version of marriage Matt is talking about is, I wouldn't say a scam, but is damaging. And at the end of the day, puts men in a position where they must, they must fill in all of these roles, all of these extra roles on top of simply being a loving husband and being a participant of a like in the family. So like the system Matt is talking about and the format he's talking about isn't actually fulfilling for a lot of guys. They, you know, how many guys you know who don't really like their families that much, take every opportunity to take a break from their families because, you know, in their version of getting married, they're the strong leader who's dragging their family behind them and trying to, it's damaging. Means you're always put upon by the people who you're supposed to love all the time. You yourself are putting a negative frame, a negative spin on everything your family does because of the way you've approached marriage.
Man to do, but give up on the entire enterprise and go his own way. In fact, there's a whole movement online, men go their own way.
Yeah,
that's basically the idea. Just give up on this stuff and do something else. This argument was summarized in a comment from a listener named Joshua, which I'll read because I think it just
hey, that's me.
Representative of this sort of mentality.
I mean, it's not, but
he says, still sounds like Matt and most tradcons' definition of what masculinity means is exclusively through the lens of women and children's wants and needs. Unfortunately, that ideal will no longer work in the modern world with birth control, hookup culture, social media, and court systems that favor women and the denigration of traditional masculinity. I don't agree.
So he was actually kind of right in the beginning of that, in the sense that masculinity, as defined by Matt Walsh, is basically only like based on services that men can provide to women and children, which men are more than just providers. Like, we are also people. Oh my fucking god, are you transphobic? I'm transphobic. Okay. Yeah. Hello, Olivia. How are you doing? You're very coming in really hot there. I mean, I appreciate you having very strong opinions, but you're coming in very hot. Also, I'm not a transphobe. But anyway, let's continue.
Agree with all of Tate's views, but it sure beats Matt's prescriptions for young men. Again, I've read a great many comments making the same kind of point.
Yes, I too also am not a fan of Matt Walsh.
A private message.
Mostly, we're just going over his. Matt Walsh is attempting to be the next, the vanguard of Andrew Tate's platform, which I don't think is going to work out very well. But it's he's certainly trying.
The listener has a similar theme. Says, Matt, I agree with many of your opinions, but your message to men is off base. Young men follow Andrew Tate because his lifestyle is the ideal, whether you admit it or not. Wealth, fame, status, beautiful women were biologically programmed to want those things. Marriage is a...
So you would have to think that like wealth and like money as a concept has somehow been ingrained in humans from like a like evolutionary level, which it's not. It's the closest thing we have to that is social hierarchies. But even those, again, are socially created. People aren't attracted to money and wealth because money and wealth are interesting. Money and wealth just give you an ability to manifest your interests and to practice your hobbies and to just kind of, live as stress-free of a life as you can at like a whim. That's the only thing money and status is going to get you, really, at the end of the day. Like, meaning if women are looking for men of high status or like wealth, what they're actually looking for is people who practice their hobbies, people who are enthralling by their enthusiasm, to not be I guess part of the rat race to a degree, but also as a, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a reason why, like, Andrew Tate has his cars, right? But Andrew Tate's not interesting because he's got a Lamborghini. He's not interesting for that, mate. Like, bro, if he's not interesting because he has a Lamborghini, nobody's interested. Women don't know what the fuck, and normal people don't know any of the mechanics or any kind of understanding of why I give a shit about a Lamborghini. What I care about, and the people that, like, people will actually find interesting, Or if you know somebody who's like a car guy or a car person in general, somebody who knows a lot about like motor vehicles and how they work and the mechanics of them, these people are interesting. The only thing buying a Lamborghini and the rest of this does is let you affect being an interesting, engaging person. It's the only thing you really get from any of this. So this whole like, oh, you need to have wealth and status. Spare me. There are millions of people who don't have wealth or status and somehow still have girlfriends, boyfriends, and relationships. Like, I don't know what this is. This is nonsense. This is, now granted, he's talking, like, the people he's addressing are MGTOWs. So, like, they are, you know, they say men going their own way. I'll be honest. These are men who have given up. These are men who have tapped out. And you know what? I get it, man. I get it. Life's hard out there. But like, for God's sakes, like, you giving up isn't gonna make your life any better. You're just gonna end up living, you giving up is just going to leave you with the same emptiness as when you tried and failed. But at least you have a chance of succeeding when you try. You know, MGTOWs are a whole different type of bag of people, man. But yeah, that's who he's addressing. Let me read this. While Matt Walsh is working on a stupid 20-page comic book, I'm working on a 400-page transgender experience book, personal. He literally looks and dresses like a 10-year-old with a beard. He definitely dresses like, Matt definitely dresses what he thinks like men should look like, which, I mean, I like flannel as much as the next guy, but it's the difference between liking flannel and affecting what you like, what you think you should like. But
a losing game. The only solution in modern society is to reject the life of service, as you call it. So what is the problem with this view? Well, to begin with, it's nothing less than a full unconditional surrender to the culture. It's true that the culture has increasingly made it difficult for both men and women to form and maintain strong, intact, lasting families.
Again, let's all remember, the culture of equality is what he's talking about. You know, women being equal to men is oppressive to men, which is bullshit. It's a loser activity right here. It's a loser stance.
And that's because the elites who run our society don't want you to live that kind of life. They prefer that you focus on your individual wants, on fulfilling your own needs and satisfying your own desires.
Yes.
That's what they prefer for you. That's the life they want for you. A self-focused life is precisely the sort of life they wish for you.
Exactly. And the reason for that, he is right on this fact. He is correct that specifically but a lot of people more broadly on the left will advocate for people to live a more fulfilling individual life. And the reason for that is because we live in a society now, we live in a society, but we live in a society now where women do not need men to provide really anything. So now that your whole provider thing has been undermined and it isn't the selling point, what do you need to do? Be a whole person. Be a whole fucking person. Have interests, have hobbies, have desires, have wants, have ambitions. Focus on you and people will gravitate towards you because you'll be fucking interesting. Like, for fuck's sake.
Makes you easier to manipulate. Less of a threat to their agenda. Not really a threat at all. I mean, if you're just out there focused on yourself, you know, being a consumer, buying lots of things for yourself, consuming things for yourself.
Wait, that's what Andrew Tate says. I don't believe you need to be consuming things. You need to be like watering your hobbies. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to buy a fucking Lamborghini or something. But like, again, interest. Fuck's sake.
You know, and all the rest of it. You're not a threat to their agenda at all. I mean, you're going along with it. All of the things.
Also, does the left wing peddle fucking vitamin supplements and shit? Is that what we do?
Mentioned by Joshua in his comment. All of those things represent a conspiracy against the family. He's right about that. The way the family court systems are set up, birth control, all the rest of it. It's an attack on the family. So what is
you say?
To give up? To give the conspirators exactly what they want? To reward them for their efforts by turning your back on the very thing they've been assaulting for decades? The family is the fortress that they have been attacking. And you can defend it with your life, or you can wave the white flag. But if you choose to surrender, then at least be honest about what you're doing. Be honest, this is not a rejection of the left's agenda, of the cultural elite's agenda. You are submitting to it. It is a submission.
It is a submission.
It's
This
certainly
is
not
true.
a strong or masculine response to run away and abandon your post, to stop fighting because the fight is.
Now, obviously, it's disturbing that that a lot of people laugh with him and not at him. More people need to laugh at Matt Walsh. See, the problem also is Matt constantly does this like wartime rhetoric when it's just people trying to live their lives, which I don't think, which at the end of the day is going to put you in a mindset that puts you in opposition to everybody around you. When you approach life, when you approach other people with a oppositional wartime frame to just how you operate as a person, you will end up naturally there's almost no way to not approach people with hostility, to approach people with hatred, with distrust. And you can't build relationships, you can't build positive relationships if you can't trust people. At the end of the day, what Matt Walsh is offering, and what Andrew Tate at the end of the day is offering, is for you to stay in your little bubble, never trust anybody, and never build a meaningful relationship that you're not in power in. And again, we were in 1923. Maybe this would be good advice. But we're in 2023. Now, Matt's trying to make this about, destroying the family. The only thing the left wants to do is destroy his concept of family, which is authoritarian and cringe. But no, your life is not a campaign against some nebulous ideological opponent. Your life is your life, and fucking make something of it. Fucking go out there, learn a skill, find a hobby, do something, become a whole person. You will just naturally attract people. The magnetism of your person will be enough eventually. But you gotta work at it. Work on yourself.
Too difficult. I mean, that approach is many things, but it certainly isn't manly. And where do you go instead? I mean, what is the next move? To give up on the family is to give up on human civilization, seeing as how there cannot be a human civilization without the family. So what's plan B after you've given up on civilization? What's next? You're also giving up on yourself, on your own legacy, your own bloodline. You are descended from a long line of men stretching back thousands of years who formed families and raised children.
How about this? Okay, I've kind of seen enough. He's made enough of an argument, and I'm also running a little bit late. I'm going to wrap this up. Let's be really clear here. Matt Walsh, at the end of the day, wants you to forego your own personal identity, your own personal growth, your own personal, personal actualization, and trade that in for civilization, trade that in for the proliferation of masculinity that Matt Walsh respects, or the masculinity that conceptually fits into his worldview. No. I've said it multiple times during this. You, as a man, probably want to be successful with the ladies. Understandable. Totally understandable. I've been there. I was in high school once. I was in college once. Not for that long, but once. And the thing that you're going to need to learn is in 2023, you are not here. The burden of being a human servant to women and children, the burden of being of needing to be the leader, of needing to be the forerunner, the need to be constantly the person out front, you've been lifted of that burden. And now what society is asking of you, and more specifically what women are going to be looking for in you, is an ability to manifest your personality and to project that out into the world and to be a three-dimensional person. That's what you want to be focusing on. Now, Matt can talk about civilization. He can make you worry about, oh my God, if I like don't date this girl, then like, 20 years from now, she won't have kids with me, which means we won't further the American of the heteronormative civilization, and because of that, now I'm not doing my part as a man in society, and because I'm not doing that, I'm failing not only my family but my forefathers and his fathers before him and everything else. Take a deep breath. Lift yourself of that burden, and you will find that at the end of the day, you have you and you have your time each day. You got your 24 hours in the day. Utilize those 24 hours to make a better version of you. And you will find that people will be way more interested in you when you're not thinking about civilization and about 40 years down the road and about your forefathers 8 billion years ago. Focus on the now and focus on where you want to be and who you want to be around and what kind of person that you want to be. Focus on those things. Take your mind off of this stuff. Not because it's, the civilization stuff. That's going to happen regardless of whatever you personally do. So, and at the end of the day, recognize that Matt Walsh is cringe and just wants you to, subscribe to his ideology because, quite frankly, he's the one at the top of the food chain of his worldview, of his world frame, of the way he structures things. So naturally, he's going to want you to reinforce that because he's at the top of it. So also kind of keep that in mind. There's also ulterior motives. You see me, I got no, I'm in a shitty little small apartment. Well, no, my apartment's really nice. I mean, not that nice, but I have a nice apartment. But like, I'm not at the top of the society. If my prescriptions, my worldview, my frame of how you approach all this doesn't help me one bit. Only helps you. So also keep that in mind. But anyway, okay. So I checked the clock and I'm quite over on time. So what am I thinking? Tomorrow, 7:00 will be Tuesday's show. We'll probably have to see what the Andrew Callahan stuff, if there's been any developments. We'll kind of figure out. Again, covered that earlier. But otherwise, I'm sure there will be stuff we'll talk about. I haven't really planned it out yet. We kind of do this day by day. But if you enjoyed any of this, it's going to be the last time I do this. I encourage you to hit that follow button. It really helps out the channel. It helps me kind of continue to kind of get the ball rolling on this whole thing. Just kind of helps me. At the moment, I have a full-time job, and this is kind of the thing I do on the side because I'd rather be doing this. So as that number go up, then I'm on here more often, which is really what I'd rather be doing. But also there's a YouTube channel down there if you ever want to check out any of the previous content I've done. I upload the segments and all the VODs if you ever want to rewatch full shows. Those are always going to be down there. But either way, I really thank you for watching. I don't have any programming notes. Either way, you've been a great audience. I've been over time by a bit, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Goodbye. Once I hit the button, which might take a second. There we go.